cup holder almost for this thing.
Yeah.
I'd be pretty sad.
I do feel like I don't know what to do with my hands. It's nice that we can actually hold these.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to our first podcast in the new not set up space. Almost set up. Half set up space.
It's still not. It's nice.
It is.
Yeah,
nice.
I like it. I like the color schemes. We don't have anything yet on the walls.
Yeah.
Relative to we had every single thing on the wall at the old place.
Yeah.
There was 10,000 holes to fill.
So many images.
Yeah.
They're
Are
all
you
in
going
the
to do that
garbage.
in here?
I have no clue what I'm going to do.
Blank canvas is tough sometimes.
Yeah, it's overwhelming.
Yeah.
We just repainted a room yesterday. I'm trying to figure out what to do with it.
What, in your house?
Yeah.
Oh.
But we're making it a homework room, so it's different.
Oh.
Like a school.
Not
Crafts.
home, like not you doing work at home.
No,
I was
absolutely
like,
not.
those are called offices.
Yeah, no. It's like a kid's office.
Yeah.
A kid's office with like 4 desks and things for each of them.
You could put photos of like Albert Einstein and
Not a bad idea.
educational.
But they're kind of dark walls that we painted it.
So what? Why could Albert Einstein not be on a dark wall?
It'd bring different color to it. So it'd help. That's what I'm saying.
All right.
All right.
All right. Who's addressing the elephant in the room? What are we doing?
I mean, I believe
I
we are.
vote Perrin.
Perrin.
Yeah.
Nope, Travis
Nope,
is going.
nope.
Yeah.
Let her go.
Yep.
Let her go. You
Perrin,
know
we
that-
put you in the middle. You're the center of attention today.
All right.
Go ahead. Lead it off.
I mean, we're talking about the 2024 CrossFit Games. It's been about, 2 weeks?
2 weeks from today.
From tomorrow that the competition started.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah. 2 weeks from tomorrow.
Today's Wednesday.
Yeah. I don't even know what day it is.
Yeah. It's been a really weird 2 weeks. I mean, I think the competition itself was like this.
Traumatic experience.
Well, yes,
Yes.
definitely. But time felt very different then. And then that whole next week, at least for me, was even crazier and almost more traumatic than the actual competition. But I think the conversation today is really just kind of talking about what our experience was starting from when we got to Fort Worth. Because I know for me, everything just was different. It was a different city. Everything felt different. You're kind of getting your bearings. Like the athletes are trying to figure out what gyms even to drop into. We were all staying in new places. And we all kind of landed a bit different times. Like I think you came in on Sunday.
Yeah. I mean, and you drove.
I drove,
So
yeah.
definitely a difference in most of us.
And I got there Monday.
You got there Monday.
Yeah.
Did you fly? You flew in.
I flew in. Yeah.
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 Well, I mean, we
Alexis
could
got
go
there
through
Sunday,
the whole timeline. I think, do we need to kind of give a caveat that we're going to not try to give too many personal opinions or what should have happened, what shouldn't happen? More just kind of, I don't know, tell the story, share some memories, talk about maybe how this influences our thinking long-term and maybe how athletes are. Chris made a beautiful tribute video and Travis was brave enough to be vulnerable and address the class.
I tried.
Yeah. And I feel like for us, our goal was to kind of celebrate his life and the good aspects of his life with the limited interaction that we have. And then now we were kind of in this weird position where we're not sure how to make content or how to talk about the sport, or like there's this big elephant in the room that's not going to get solved immediately. And we know that for us, getting back to work and being together and doing things that are purposeful are important, but we also want to be respectful, and we also understand that this major tragedy happened and that there's family members grieving and a community grieving and a lot of things that need to get worked out in a sport and a lot of unproductive things happening on the internet. So for us, this was kind of an attempt. Hopefully you guys are seeing it and it actually gets published, but we're going to try to just do our best to talk through like, hey, what was this experience like for us to go through? Because it was not just traumatic for the fans and the athletes. Like it was literally everybody in there just had this huge shock of an event, and it happened really quickly. And I think it'll be helpful for us to just even process our thoughts. So this could just be for our archives later on that nobody ever sees, but hopefully we can talk about it with dignity and respect. And then afterwards we all feel good. And now our audience can kind of listen to what we think about it. Yep. So you got there first, Trav.
Oh, man.
Yeah. When did you get there?
Yeah. So me and Alexis left Sunday midday. Ended up getting there because it's a couple hours back from us. So we got there, I think it was like 2 or 3 o'clock on Sunday afternoon. And then I ended up being her chauffeur for a little bit because Andy and her whole crew were not here yet. So I think we ended up just like kind of going to the grocery store, getting things kind of like slightly prepped for the week, right? Like things that you can start doing, and then dropped her off at the hotel and her hotel, and then drove to mine, and then went and got groceries and kind of the normal stuff of an event, right? You start getting food prepped for the week and trying to get into the right headspace and all of those kind of things. And then next morning we went to a gym, where then we just did kind of like our first session and then met up there. And
we had some of the workouts. So you did what? I forget, like clean speed ladder work.
Yeah, some cleans. We did some squatting, then some EMOMs, some rope climbs, just a bunch of like random touches of things. And then, I mean, even the first person I saw in there was Lazar. So definitely kind of strange now being back in this situation. But yeah, so then did that, and then
I arrived. Well,
I was gonna say, I know you mentioned it in the tribute video, but you want to just go like how was that interaction between you guys?
Yeah, I mean,
People hadn't seen
good, fun as usual, banter. I mean, that was honestly the first thing that came out of his mouth to me and mine back to him. It's first like, hey, how you doing? Like, how was the travel? And then like just things along the lines of, we're not getting rid of you anytime soon, and those kind of things. And how are the kids doing? And then I was like, well, how are you feeling? He's like, honestly, this is the best I've felt, because usually I've come into the games feeling sick. And so he was feeling very excited for the year. So yeah, I mean, it just, sucks.
Yeah, but at that time you weren't thinking about that.
Yeah. I mean, just now thinking back of like those interactions, and then talking with his girlfriend, and then talking about the stepovers and what kind of way it could be, like, right? How do you think they would do this? And then he even had a setup that was kind of how it ended up being there. For Chad.
Yeah.
That he was like, I think some of the people were doing stuff like this. It could be like that. And it ended up being very similar to that format.
Yeah. I got there what did you get there on Monday?
Yep, I got there Monday. I think I got there before you.
Oh, okay. I got there Monday afternoon, and our first experience was at the lake. Like, I got off the plane, and
we went to the lake that day too.
Yeah.
Yep.
And him and Linda had trained in the morning, and then we all met at the lake, which it was an interesting experience because it was super hot. I mean, we went, and it was, what time did I arrive?
Well, you told us you arrived at a certain point in time, and then we waited there for a while.
My Uber got lost. They missed the exit.
So we were waiting outside for about 45 minutes.
But it was hot. Like, it was middle of the day hot. It was over 100.
It was like 4 p.m.
Yeah.
5 p.m. So it was very, I got back to the car, and it said 1:16. So it was definitely toasty sitting out there.
Yeah, and we spent a lot of time, like, we were at the area, we were looking at where the trail was. I was on Google Earth kind of mapping out the proper places. Like, there was a boat dock on the other side of the lake, then there was a boat entrance, so we figured those were the only two places that they potentially could have went, and the boat ramp that we're at was the start and finish. And when we got there were CrossFit staffers that were doing stuff there. So we're like, okay, well, this is the place that they're going to do something. And it ended up being that was the start and the finish line. Travis had a cut on his leg, so he didn't want to enter the water. Linda did some work where we kind of prepped for a couple events all at once. We prepped for
we did
sprint.
5 miles of running. We didn't just do a little bit of work. We
didn't do 5 miles.
Yeah, we did.
Did you?
Yeah.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Yes.
Really?
Oh, I don't know. I wasn't there.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Well, whatever. We prepped for the run mile, we prepped for the sprint, and we prepped for the run into the water. But it was all like spread out. Some of it was warm up stuff, and only Linda and her friends did run and swim. And at the time, I looked over and I was like, man, this is a really long sighting. Like, and actually the CrossFit people that I was talking to, I was asking like, hey, what's the sighting going to be like? How often are they going to send the buoys? Cause we've been to the open water before, and if you're like tired, it can be very tough to sight exactly where you're going. But that was really like the only thought that I had in the moment, was just thinking that this was going to be a super, super tough workout. And they did some swimming, and then that was really the end of Monday. That was like my whole, like, I went to the grocery store, got set up in the hotel, was hanging out, and then kind of the weekend, like, just flowed into the actual competition from there.
Yeah, I drove, and it was about maybe 11-ish hours. Super boring drive. basically a straight shot from Georgia all the way to Texas. Listened to some good podcasts. And then I got there, I checked into my hotel room. Chris, who was competing on a team, hadn't gotten there yet. He was going to be a few hours behind because he took a later flight. So I think I was like messaging you and Adam like, hey, Snap Kitchen's doing these deals, like trying to figure out food and orienting myself as well. So I don't think I did anything that day, but the next morning I think was check-in. Yeah. And so that's kind of where I feel like it started, right? That's when everybody sees each other for the first time, and you guys had time windows you had to do. So they were divided by female first and then male, but there were time blocks. So I knew like Bethany was in the 8 a.m. slot. I think she got there at like 7:30, 7:45. I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to get in with her because they said you only can bring one person, but I ended up coming towards the tail end of her check-in, and they let me in. So just, the experience of checking in is always interesting, right? Like you have a new sponsor with GoRuck this year. So I was curious how they were going to do it and what the gear was going to look like. And there's always interesting situations with fitting clothes.
Yeah, I had a very interesting situation.
Yeah,
this year.
Max was with Linda.
Yeah.
And then just the whole process of taking photos. There were some interviews going on.
Are we going to get to hear that interesting stuff?
Yeah, I'll get back to it. I don't want to cut. Yeah.
Interviews going on with CrossFit. You have the flair of being in Fort Worth with the cowboy hats. And they got a lot of cool stuff this year, but there were definitely some issues with the clothes, which I think there's always going to be.
I think it was fitting. So nothing fit Linda. Like they gave her a size.
I got an entire wardrobe, different one.
Oh, you did? You changed all yours
Every
too?
size,
Yeah.
yeah.
But I was in the area for 2 hours that morning. And I've only ever done it with Travis and Noah, who are usually like,
Done pretty quick.
This doesn't fit, put it on.
Yep.
So the people were coming over to me and asking me what was wrong. I was like, I'm not trying clothes on. I don't know what's going on here.
What was wrong?
Yeah.
It was too big or too small?
Yeah. Well, I
For
think
me, too small. For me personally.
Yeah.
Like I wear a large in everything. Usually everything. But it was like the large, like the shorts just kind of like cut up and rode up. And I hate when shorts are too short. And if I squat and they stay up, I hate that. Like to me, I don't enjoy that. So then I just got an extra large to where it was kind of just baggier and never actually got stuck. And then the Ranger panties, I mean, none of us have ever worn. I've never seen anybody compete in those. So
those are called Ranger panties?
Yeah. So I feel
that's like a real
that,
thing?
Yeah.
Oh.
That like Rangers actually like use.
They're like really
training.
short running shorts, basically.
But CrossFitters don't usually wear those things ever. So I think it was just one of those things where you're like, oh, come on. Yeah. Like take some feedback of like, if you've never seen any athlete wearing these, maybe not what we'd want to wear to compete in. But I think the simplest answer to solve that solution is you just, after semis, you give people a kit and you let them try it over the next few weeks leading up to the games. Like to me, that just makes the most sense of how someone can get used to it versus like the day of try this.
I think the sizing just is like the unique body profiles of women athletes. There's people with thicker waists, smaller waists, thicker legs, bigger butts, bigger breasts, no breasts. All of these things is very hard to be like, oh, there's this size and it's going to fit properly. So I think there are a lot of people that just like, oh, these fit better on the legs, but then there's this big saggy waistband. So people were just, or Linda specifically was trying, I think she went through 4 different sizes to try, like of every single thing. And then they ran out of sizes to print on. So she only had certain color profiles. And these are not things, fashion is not something I'm equipped to deal with as a coach. I think was in over my head.
We're spending a lot of time building up to things because we know what's coming. And it's just easier to dive into a conversation like this and, not just go straight into it. But it is kind of funny just looking at the trivial shit that was things to bitch about the day before.
Yeah.
Clothing size.
I think all the trivial shit is like what makes the experience. And then when we've talked about this as a group where it's like, if you weren't there going through all this stuff, it like makes the whole thing. It's a very different experience than if you're just media or just spectating or whatever. And these are the relationships you build. These are the interactions that you see between the athletes before the competition starts. Because that's actually like, I feel like that's the time where you actually have a chance to talk to people. You know, you're not talking to them that much in the warm-up area. You're not talking to them on the field. So it kind of brings everyone together.
Yeah, I also think, I mean, maybe you delete this or maybe we're blabbing too much, but I think also it sets the tone for this is the group of people that process this trauma together. Like the people that were doing the apparel for Go Rec, who did that whole entry process, were all volunteers that were in the warm-up area after it happened. The athlete control were the people that were walking us through that we get to experience year after year. We're with athletes that we've coached for a really long period of time. So it kind of sets the tone for like, oh, this is our community of people that we're reintegrating and going through these fun, weird experiences. And like, you know, the typical stuff that athletes get the gear and some people are happy and some aren't, and people's flags are wrong and upside down. And it sets just the overall tone, I think, for the headspace we were in for when the experience actually happened and kind of shifted everything.
Yeah. After the check-in with Bethany, that's when we actually went to the lake. So I went to the lake with her and Randy and her media guy. And that was like 10, 11 a.m. So it was closer to the time we were doing the event. And the purpose of that really was for her to ideally get in the water and feel it. We didn't really know where the course was going to be, so we probably did the same thing as you. We parked, we looked around and kind of estimated. She originally did not want to get in the water at all because I didn't have any swimming gear. We didn't have a paddleboard. It just so happened that a Swedish team came with one of those giant paddleboards because they were just having an active recovery day. And she was like, can you just kind of like sight me from here to here? We didn't do much swimming, but she had a traumatic experience in the water when she used to live in Vegas, swimming cold water, where I guess Carrie Pierce was on a paddleboard, luckily, and she swam out and she just like froze in the water. And Carrie was luckily there and helped her. So she needed to almost get over that because when she went out to open water in training, the same thing kind of happened to her. And I'm very glad in hindsight that we did that because I think it made her more comfortable. But right away we established how shallow it was close to that start and finish line. Her goggles fogged up right away. We put the Rokas on and I was like, okay, well you need to spit in them or get a defogger, and how murky it was. And I also think she said after the event, because she swam to like, there's like a little peninsula about 100 meters from the finish. She mentally knew because we did that, what she kind of spotted that and knew like, okay, I'm almost towards the end. So just if everyone had maybe the opportunity to do that, they actually knew what the course was, maybe like you can kind of prepare yourself a little bit. But even that being said, like, remember I sent out an email to all the coaches beforehand about the triathlons that take place at this location. And I was very surprised at the course that they ended up using because it was not the same at all as what the triathlons usually run. Usually they run like an out and back. It's like kind of like an L shape, not necessarily a triangle, but you would start at the finish line. You would go kind of around that peninsula out and come back in. So it's not straight across the lake. It's not one line. Like you can kind of contain it. And then also the run course isn't around the lake. It was to the left.
Yeah, it was up that kind of like road that was on the side.
Down and back. So it basically cut the whole course in half because they're going down and back. So I was just super surprised when I saw it. I was like, I knew it was going to be across the lake because everybody had kind of figured that out. And I was just like, this is just so far.
Yeah, it's like, a big, long, open water.
And it's weird when you see it.
Yeah, in person.
You're like, whoa.
Yeah, long.
Right, like you're starting here, running there, and like,
yeah.
We also knew where the sun was at that time of day because the sun had come up. And when Bethany was swimming back, she's like, I could not see anything. The sun was in my eyes the entire time. And she's like, I think that's going to be a problem.
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah, it was a challenge for sure. Yeah. So then that was Tuesday, check-in, Wednesday. All I remember was there was a briefing at night that we went to. They did the hammer briefing.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, the hammer,
that was a very
sandbag.
interesting experience to go through that brief, personally, to watch that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I feel like over the years it's always been, maybe just because I've been in it longer, it's just different experiences every time and a new venue. But it was very anticlimactic about how it all was unfolded and just like, okay, sledgehammer tire. And we were all like, this is what we're doing? Like, this is a joke? Like, everybody was like, really? But then it's immediate. They come up with a standard, And you're like, okay, well, has to be perfect over your head. And you're like, perfectly straight. And you're like, okay, well, then they're like, no. And you're like, how are you? This is subjective now to the judge. And you're like, here we go again. Like the first workout after this is going to be something that the judges are going to mess up. And then people started coming up with faster ways to do it, which they didn't think about.
We went to Home Depot and got a sledgehammer and went to the local gym and started playing around with the technique that they did. And we ran into Emma Tall and David Sharonke, and it was like a group of us playing with basically gaming strategies. Like, how can you make this smooth? And so that was basically like all day Wednesday was basically that briefing and that. And
then you get an email that there's a new standard for it.
But that came out. Did that come out that night?
Because then you could do it after the swim. That's when we went back to the venue, and you were like, hey, you have till 10 to practice the new technique, and then we practiced the new technique.
Oh, yeah. Okay, well, we jumped ahead. So, that's the end of Wednesday, and then now here is kind of like where the whole weekend kind of shifted. So we get up. I think did we do a 4:30 wake-up call?
Yeah, we did a 4:30 wake-up call, and we left at 5.
Yeah, 4:30. No, we left. Did we leave at 5? 5:30.
5:30 because I had breakfast.
The three of us rode together, or did I ride with Perrin?
You rode with me.
Yeah, I rode with
you got
Travis.
out and filmed us met there, and then you rode with her.
Right.
Yeah, so we get there or have breakfast, whatever, drive over there. We get there. It's in the dark. We're not really sure where to go. We go through the check-in. They bring the athletes and the coaches into one area. Then they tell the coaches that they can't be in the warm-up area, so we kind of got pushed off to the side. And we were probably, if you look at the finish line where you saw everyone coming through the finish line and you just went straight ahead, maybe another 100 meters or so, there was a barricade that kept everyone out. And I stayed in that same spot for the whole event. And I just remember it being man, it's really dark right now. But it probably makes sense that it has to go off in this time because it's going to get so hot later and this is going to be a tough event. And people started warming up, and I don't know where to go from here in terms of walking through what that event was like. Your experience is going to be different than our experience because you were actually in the race.
Was in the workout.
And we never, this is, I'll hear some of it right now. Me and Trav never really went through a deep, you go through a normal competition and you do a debrief of the event and you do a debrief of each event. How did it go? How are you feeling? Whatever. This whole competition was so different than anything I've ever experienced in my whole life. And everything that we have spoken about since has been processing what happened. What does this mean for your future, our future, the company, the sport itself? And we never really had a chance to talk about just the actual experience of the race.
I also just feel it wasn't important enough to even talk about.
Yeah,
it didn't matter.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Yeah. I do remember, so right before the event, Linda was about to do it, and the swim the swim and the run, that event specifically, and it was a mass start. And originally I was like, hey, it's warm, don't put your cap on. And then I was like, okay, but where's she going to run with the cap? Is she going to tuck it into her bathing suit? We'd already had issues in the past with her getting the cap on over her head. We didn't know where the transition area was, what it looked like. And then I was like, okay, well, we were in Georgia and it was really hot. She wore the cap for running. So I think I'm just going to, I saw a bunch of people with caps on. So literally at the last minute, I was like, hey, I think you can wear your cap and just do the run with it. I'm not sure if in hindsight, I had a lot of angst before it. I yelled to her to get her over. And that's really the only thing that I really remember from before the race. Me and him were pretty confident with what his run pace was going to be, his strategy going into it, kind of expectations and all of that stuff. So I felt relatively confident and we were really prepared for it because we went to the lake so many times and it was extra hot. The water temperature here is way cooler than there, but the air temperature was pretty close. So I wasn't really thinking about overheating stress and all of that type of stuff.
Yeah, I felt it when we were warming up. I ran for a second. I was like, that's enough of this. It just felt very hot. And I was like, it's also the nerves of the first workout, the adrenaline. You're like, there's no need. And so we talked and it was 10 miles or whatever, and then 6:20 and then a 6:30. And then the running with the goggles was a weird experience.
Did you have them on your head?
No, so I put them around my neck and ran with them there, and then until we got till the it's just super annoying.
Yeah.
And then you got to probably 800 meters left. I took them off to make sure they weren't like fogged up, which they weren't, thankfully. And then it was like a very weird, chaotic kind of like transition of just like drop your stuff here, walk over here, jump in.
Yeah.
And then I felt like as soon as we got into the water, for me, the slight playback was when I panicked with you, like a couple weeks prior. That was strange, but then it was like that just always is kind of like in the back of your head, like, all right, are you gonna be fine like out here? And then you dive in, and then I hate swimming at the sim cap in general. Like I just don't like it. So wearing it to me,
we had
it's
to
already,
convince you to wear it.
Yeah, like to me, it's already like a stressful thing. But even when we were running, there was swim caps all along that people just dropped because they didn't want to run with them or wear them. Like, oh, it fell. Like, because they were like, well, if it like falls off, what do I do? I'm like, all right, just keep going.
So a lot of people just swam without them?
If you were on the run course, you could like we would pass people's swim caps just sitting there. So some of those people didn't have them on.
I thought that was mandatory. Oh,
it was.
But okay.
But if you're running for 3.5 miles and then
how
you're
could you
burning up and it happened to fall, I'm not going to stop and go back. I didn't know it fell.
Interesting.
Whatever. So you get in, and I don't know, I was probably 15 seconds in, 20 seconds into the swim, and I was like, I'm very hot. Like just body temperature. I wanted the swim cap off. I was debating even just taking it off and throwing it off because I was like, shoot, well then I'm going to take off the goggles. And like, this is going to be a process of trying to do this. And then like, just had to almost like calm my mind down of like, you're fine. Like just swim normal. And I feel like I swam decent. I mean, relatively trying to think back now to like how it unfolded. I mean, sighting was definitely an issue. Looking back, when they brought us over to the finish line and said, you don't have to follow the buoys, I was like, well, that seems kind of stupid because like that's what you would sight off of. It was like, just get to the finish line.
The buoys were bowed, right? Is that why they changed the rule? Because it wasn't
the buoys were like
line?
probably 30 meters off, 40 meters off of like
off the
line of like where you would ideally hug because of shorter swim distance.
When did they announce? I heard all of this coming out after in media, but obviously like I didn't hear that anywhere in the briefing or anything. When did they tell you guys that?
Right before the run. We all went down to the side. They were like, all individual athletes come down here. And he's like, hey, look, there's where you're going. Here's all the buoys. You can stay to the side of them and hug it, or you can sight off of it and go. And I knew that there was a very small yellow triangle buoy, like very small, on the corner of that. And then there was the big, larger ones in the middle.
Can you explain real quick why that change is like, because I don't even understand why that affects things because I'm not that smart.
Hold on. Do you mean why it affects the swim or why it affects the safety?
I was just more so like.
If you looked at where you would cross, you can see that the buoys are 30 to 40 meters off of that line of like where you're entering. So if I see that and I drew a straight line, I would have to go swim like this, then cut in and go this way. So I would be swimming further.
Yeah, the shortest distance.
So for me, finding the straight line to the smallest buoy and then hug the corner as much as I can, it's a shorter swim.
Yeah.
So for me, that was just kind of like a no-brainer of like, try to stay on that left side. And even when we were swimming, like people were 30 meters away from me. Like no one was like close to me because I was on the far left side in hopes that I was doing it right of shortening the distance, where some people were on the far right sighting those buoys because it's easy to see.
Sorry, did they say why they made that change? Did I miss that just now?
There wasn't really a change. It was just kind of like there wasn't clear guidelines of you had to be like on, like usually it'd be like you have to go out and you have to hug the buoy to your left because usually we don't go straight out.
Hold on. I thought I was in a briefing where they said that
you have to stay on the left side of the buoy.
You have to stay
which
on the
is
left
standard for swim events.
Yes, yeah. And so there's like double ramifications. There's if you have a buoy line that's not straight, like, all right, it's 800 or 900 meters as the crow flies in a straight line. If the buoys are set off in a bow, it could be like 1,000 meters or 1,100 meters. So generally
even
speaking,
when we did work leading up, Gilpin, like my sighting wasn't very good. And Gilpin made up a ton of time on a couple workouts that I was like, man, I need to like get better at
swim
this.
In a straight line.
So then I knew like, okay, if people are going wider, I can make up a lot of time by going on the inside and just kind of like taking that chance of seeing if it's possible, which looking back, I don't know.
Yeah. Did you notice anything? Like, I hear all these stories. I read Elisa Fuliano's post, and Jeff Adler or Hinshaw talked about Jeff Adler. Alexis got offline. All of these things, I think, compound the post-trauma scariness and like, holy crap. But did you actually notice anything? I know. So I was at the finish line, and somebody at some point, and not at the finish line, but 100 meters away from the finish line, I did notice at some point somebody jumping in and swimming from the side, which I was like, what's going on? Like, I thought it was just somebody like jumping in and like trying to get on camera or something. And then there was somebody on that little like outcropping that was walking. They stood up and it was shallow enough and they walked. And I remember being like, this is really weird. Is that not part of the standard that somebody can like, shouldn't you have to swim the whole distance? I didn't realize like what was going on, but it seemed like a huge number of the athletes were like really stretched. My conversation with you and Linda were really my only two, and both of you didn't really have that necessarily.
No,
hard, but just like, I don't know, maybe because we prepped a lot more. We did a lot of sighting.
Like the prepping, I mean, I think things that are harder, right? Like you're like trying to get used to goggles that you've never worn, and like trying to get used to, like, those are things that I feel like make you panic in a more.
What was different about them?
You had to wear Roka goggles,
so they
because
don't fit
they're the sponsor.
same.
But I'm like, it fits different on my eyes. They were a different colored lens than like what I would normally swim with. So like, there's a difference of when you jump into the water and you're expecting it to feel a certain way, and then when it doesn't, or you can't see correctly, or they fog up way faster than what you're used to. Like, it's a freaky situation, and then you're doing that after a 3.5 mile run. It's not like I'm jumping in fresh and I'm swimming in a pool and I can see the bottom line. It's like you're looking down and don't see anything. You look up, you can't see anything. The sun's coming up and you're like, I really hope I'm on line.
Yeah.
You see people to the right and you're like, well, they're way off line of what I am. Who's right now? I don't know.
You can't reorient yourself because you're in a big open expansive water.
And you don't know if
and the buoy
you do
lines
6
aren't.
strokes and then you look up and you're off where you thought you were. So you're like trying to navigate that.
Was there ever a moment where you were like, now I got it figured out and I know what I'm doing?
No.
Oh.
Really?
No.
Like
I
not
don't
even
feel
close
like-
to the
I was
finish
legit
line?
expecting you to give
No,
me a
Yeah,
once I
same.
got to
Yeah.
the finish line, both my hamstrings started to cramp. So then I just like backed off how I was swimming, because try to pull more with your arms at that point. But no, I mean, I feel like it just was kind of like an uncomfortable swim the whole time. Like, it never felt like you like had a rhythm. I think you're like, to me, sometimes I get focused on the negative things of like, I'm really pissed I have to wear the swim cap. I'm pissed I have to wear these goggles. Like, I don't want to be wearing either one of these. Like, this is just like, why can't we train the things we get to use normal? But then when both my hamstrings started to cramp, it happened when we were in training. So I was like, all right, I kind of know what this is like.
What is that like?
That's a terrifying feeling.
It's
Like,
really-
can you explain it? Because I've never had that happen.
You've never cramped in the water?
Well, I mean, I just don't swim.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Yeah, I mean, like, if you don't swim, I mean, right? Like, it's the same thing as when you're out of water, but like, you feel your hamstrings starting to knot up. Like, you can feel it starting to like clinch. And for me, I just stopped kicking with my legs at that point, and then just try to pull really hard with my arms, or I'd go to side stroke or something to try to change the position.
But the thing there, and maybe this is just like luck or the fact that you've been in the game for a long period of time, is that we've done a lot of open water swim work. Like, you did it at the games multiple times. You've been in the ocean. We have lake access here. But if you're a little bit of a less experienced swimmer and you get into an experience where you're like at your limit and yet you're at your kind of like critical threshold, I'm not using Lazar as an example because he's was a elite swimmer. But if you start to have those feelings where your muscles have gotten to their limits and you don't know how to propel yourself without it, I think it can be very, very, very
It's a terrifying
frightening.
feeling.
It's frightening in the pool. I've had calf cramps in the pool, and even just the reaction to like the pain of a really bad cramp in the water messes with your body line. And then you start to just like, well, your feet go down and then you're kind of like in water tread mode and you're tired and you can't see. And I think that was something that I had kind of thought about, is just even elite CrossFitters who are really, really experienced athletes themselves are just not that experienced swimming wise. And that could be potentially scary. And we had a moment like that. He wears freaking earplugs, and he
because I have vertigo. It's
Yes,
not just
yeah,
because I wear them.
yeah, I know.
Because I'll get out and
I
start
know.
throwing up.
I just get mad because it scared the crap out of me. But we were at the lake prepping for this event, and he ran real fast, and Caden was there, and Caden brought the pace of the pack out really fast, and they ran like low 6 miles for 2 miles, got into the water, and there was like the wind was blowing a lot, so I was trying to keep the buoy from moving offline because it was hanging and the anchor wasn't in the ground. So he thought I was like messing with them and pulling a Dave Castro in terms of like moving the end goal, and then that messed with his focus. And he had like a little bit of a mini panic attack where I could hear his breathing get really weird, and he started just like treading water, and I was yelling to him because I was only 5 feet away from him, like, hey, are you okay? Hey, are you okay? And he couldn't hear me. And then eventually he just kicked back up and swim. But I just remember that feeling. And then as all this stuff happened, I feel like that whole realization and like processing of that, like amplified the whole situation for me. Like, man, like this is just a real scary situation to be in for people.
My one thought about them changing the standard on not having to follow the buoys is when we first got there and everyone was running around kind of in that pen warming up, I was like, there's a breeze right now. I thought I felt a breeze. Or maybe that, I don't know, maybe I'm remembering wrong. But the only thing I could think of is the buoys actually moved. And they were like, well, now we just increase this by 200 meters if they follow the buoys. So we're going to tell them you can just sight whatever you want.
Yeah.
But like, they've never seen the course before besides a diagram that you draw on a whiteboard the day before. So I'm
clear.
not really sure if anyone will really understand how to do that unless you have experience.
Yeah.
And so like I believe Bethany she said she drafted off someone for the majority of the swim.
Yeah.
And if you're drafting off somebody that is actually
That can sight
and going at the same pace as you, it's an astronomically easier. And I'm not saying that's the reason she did well necessarily, but she's also done a lot of triathlon. So all that experience, to your point, adds up. And she knew where that peninsula was because we swam at it the day before. So, and she's like, well, the finish line's right there. So all this information I feel like makes a huge difference. And that's just on top of just the normal protocol of it. Like, I'm pretty sure all triathlons, it's always stay on the left side of the buoys. That's just like a standard.
Yeah.
And then that sight line from buoy to buoy is way easier to see than like you just trying to find the finish.
Yeah. And I think it's shorter too. I think there's I don't know exactly, but a set distance that the buoys are supposed to be in. But I don't want to necessarily get into that. And like, we don't have all the details, and there's this investigation.
Yeah. Did you finish your swim experience? Like, did you finish that up?
Yeah, I mean,
it's cramping
pretty much
near the
after
end.
the cramping, I knew I could see I was at the end, and then pretty much hopped out and was like, I have no clue how that was, right? Like, you don't know when you're first getting out. And then I remember going over, saying to him, and he's like, I think anywhere from the 12th to 15th, somewhere in that ballpark. And I was like, oh, all right, because I knew when I was running, I was not in that placement. So I was like, let's see if we can make up some ground. And then in that, now looking back, I went over to the cold plunge, and one of the judges' guys came over and was like, hey, have you seen Lazar? And I was like, no, but they just called his name because it was Luca that was actually coming in after me. Then went somewhere else, and someone else asked me the same question again. And I'm like, man, that's weird. Like, why are multiple people asking me like where he is when like they just called his name?
And that was it. I mean,
and then after that, it was like, all right, let's leave and go back. Let's start fueling up and
interviewed you guys. Y'all took off.
Yeah. Linda came over, and like emotional roller coaster, I think, is the best way, or I don't know, like to describe just how things felt and how weird the whole experience was. But
I don't think it was till we were back at the hotel.
It wasn't.
When we were there that it was like the whole thing shifted.
Yeah. And overall, I felt really good about the first event prior to getting any information about Lazar. But Linda had horrible experiences when we went up to the lake, and we were concerned whether she was going to swim or do breaststroke or whatever. And she ended up finishing in the top half of the pack. you finish in a pretty good position considering what training had looked like. Bethany had finished pretty well. We were surprised with Alexis's finish, but it wasn't like so much damage that she couldn't get back from. And
she was hurting after that.
Yeah. She was hurting,
but
we don't know if it was the workout itself or
or if she got sick.
Yeah, or swallowed water or sickness or just stuff related to her stomach sickness. But we left and we were like in the mode of going back and getting fueled for the next workout. You stayed on site, right?
Yeah.
And he stayed on site.
Yeah,
and Habdo stayed on site.
I took him back because the team was supposed to go at 8 a.m. and I stayed there because we were trying to figure out how to get Bethany's shoes back because she has very expensive custom orthotics in them, and they were all the way on the other side of the lake, and no one could give her an answer. So we just hung around, and I observed a lot of things go down. But she was laying on her back, getting interviewed. Sevon interviewed her, turned off his camera, and then he turns to me and he goes, "I can't believe what's going on right now." And he basically described to me the situation, and I don't know what time that was. That was before the teams were supposed to go, because right after that I realized, I looked at my clock and I was like, there's a delay, like they're not going. And I was like, there's some, like, this is all wrong. So I hung around for, I don't remember what time I took you back. We were there where we saw the ambulances pull up and the fire trucks pull up, which was maybe 8:15, 8:20 something.
I don't know what the times were. I was waiting around for the teams.
Yeah,
I was waiting around to interview Lex because me and Adam were texting, and he was saying like, yeah, she's in this thing, and I was hopeful that maybe I could talk to them, and then so I was just waiting for them to get out, and then Will Brandstetter came up to me and he said, "Have you heard what's going on?" And then he told me, and like instantly I just got the cold sweats, and then pretty much the rest of the time like my leg would just be shaking, and it was this weird because there was like few people who started to become in the know that something was amiss, but then there was still a whole, not as big of a crowd as the individuals, but the whole amount of crowd there for the team, just waiting for that to start. And just, it was a weird feeling knowing that these people have no idea what's happening, and we're just finding out what's happening. And I don't know, it's a very, very trippy feeling, but yeah. And then a little while after that, I don't know how long, but how long do you think it was until after you found out, till you saw the medics and stuff? So hard to say, right?
15 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes.
Yeah, time is the whole concept of time just got very distorted in general. Like I forgot what day it was.
Same.
We just got text messages. You sent me a text message. Kyle Habdo sent me a text message. The team got canceled, and then me and Travis
we were just watching the Olympics,
like
sitting in the hotel.
Yeah, we were trying not to think about the competition and like kind of go into the next thing. And I don't know, just like the way the communication was delivered was so.
It just felt off.
Yeah, and like getting a text message from him, and this was like an hour or something after the event had finished. So I was like, surely something can't really have gone that wrong if we didn't hear about it at this point. Like, I would have just thought that we would know. And that whole experience was really trippy. And prior to, like, no information had really gone out to confirm anything. And the timeline of the second event was such that we were like, okay, well, they sent out this email about this new standard. There was no information yet that somebody had actually passed away and that this was a legitimate emergency. I had information from them. I had heard that there was the ambulance, but no one said like, hey, it's confirmed he did not come out of the water, blah, blah, blah. So we like went back to the event.
Yeah, because there was a whole period of time where we're sitting there just hopeful that like he walked away or
me and him were so confused because I was at the finish line and I heard them call his name out.
Yeah, I have it on video. The announcer says the wrong name, which is, I mean,
yeah, it makes sense because
they look similar. They're wearing a head,
Yeah.
like there's no fault. That's not my point here, but it's like a unfortunate mistake because then everyone's like, well, yeah, I heard him call in.
Yeah, so I heard him call his name and I was like, okay, and then when they asked again, I was like, well, that's still kind of weird, but I was like, I mean, they said his name, so he's there, but then we were just hanging out, and then it was like we had to be back at the venue at like 10:40 or something. Or no, the workout started at 10:40 or something.
I think the workout started at 12.
No, it was at like 10:40 was supposed to be the second one.
Really?
Yeah.
That early?
Yeah.
Huh.
The first heat
of
it. And so then we were like, all right, well, we need to like get back, go do like test the sledgehammer one more time.
Because they changed the standard overnight, and they said that you'll have another window to try it out. No information had really went out. I'd had a scare before like that at Wadapalooza that ended up being that somebody just ended up coming out of the water and leaving. So I think I was still in this mindset that like, hey, like if there was an emergency, we would have heard by now. Like this is 2 hours later. There's no way that, whatever. So we went to the venue as if like
we're competing
and nothing really had happened, practicing hammer standards, but there was an air of strangeness. Like, so some people had to have been in the know. And
I just had such a different experience than you guys because you guys had left.
Because you were there.
I immediately, with all the information I had, I think within 5 minutes, I was like, he definitely drowned in the lake. Like, I knew it right away because of what was going on. I think I even saw Luca around, like, still in his swimsuit, like, freaking out. Josie, who was photographing Bethany the day before, we were in the gym for Adidas, like best friends with him, comes up, like she's in a cold tub with Randy and me, and he comes up and he's like, hey, Bethany, can I just borrow your goggles? We're trying to look for a friend in the water. And it's like, so I was just like, I just thought right away. And so, when we're texting, me, you, and Adam, and like you guys were like, okay, well, we're going to the warm-up area because we've heard nothing.
At this point, you're still at the finish line?
I think I might have just gotten back to my hotel, and I'm like texting you guys. I'm like, I don't think this competition's going on. Like, I started packing my room.
Yeah. I mean, I thought at the minimum that we would be going there to get information.
Right.
Like, I thought, okay, well, this is an opportunity where all of the athletes were planned to be in this one location. If something really did go down, we're all in the same spot. We're going to get told what's happening, what we're going to do, how things are going to move forward, or the competition's going on. Like, I didn't know that there was something.
I don't know. I feel like, me and Perrin being at the finish line, it's like when the ambulance and the fire truck came up and then like people are now going into the water, we didn't stay there too much longer, I don't think. But that's when it was like, okay, this is like real.
I feel like that definitely is like would hit you more than us. Like when we left, it was normal and teams were literally about to go in, and I would remember like wishing them good luck, and then.
And it's not like we were having these big text messages back and forth. You just said like, oh, the rumors Lazar didn't come out of the water, and I was like, okay, well, there's rumors happen all the time. Like they're not always valid,
right.
and.
But then there was the moment where it's like, so after that, then they came over the PA and were like, because the teams are waiting to start their, like they're at the starting line, and they came over the PA and saying like, hey, this event has been canceled. You could go back to your cars or something like that. Yeah. And that's when it was like, there was the handful of people who were kind of in the know previously. And then the crowd kind of like, it was like apparent that something was up, and it was just like the weirdest feeling. And then me and you drove back, and we were just like, there's no way this doesn't get canceled. That's the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was my thought immediately.
Yeah. Yeah. So then that day was just super strange on so many levels. We went there. Somebody at some point came up to me.
Angel
and confirmed.
Came up to us and was like, because we were like, we need to know something. Like, are we competing in a little bit? Like, what's happening? And then
Mm-hmm.
this is back at Dickey's.
Yeah. We were at the arena.
Then we were just waiting. We're like, it was Vellner, me, I think Crone.
Adler was there.
Yeah, and we were all just kind of like,
Carolina's who told
what's
me.
happening? Like,
can you set that? I know we're jumping over the place. So let me have you tee up the scene. So you go back to Dickey's.
Yeah, I mean, we go back to Dickey's thinking we're going to compete in 90 minutes at that point.
Because you still don't know that it's like anything's for sure happening.
No, he told me at the hotel that
you guys
the team event was canceled and that something could have happened. And in my head, I'm like, well, nah, he was a good swimmer. Like, there's no way. Like, he's fine. And then when we get back, everybody, you could just feel the energy in, like, I don't know how to describe it, but like the energy was weird as soon as you walked in, and like it just felt off.
Yeah,
and
but
then
it felt off. But people were still warming up with the hammers and
some
testing
people
out
didn't
the
know.
new standard. We didn't know.
Yeah,
we knew there was an issue, but we didn't.
Well, some
know
people didn't
that.
even know that there was a potential issue.
Yeah. There wasn't really a lot of communication about it, and I think there could be a lot of reasons why an event was canceled. I mean, even if somebody had a serious heat event and they were just like, "Hey, this next event's not safe," or there were. If you weren't there and you didn't see it and you didn't have somebody telling you like, hey, like those people are crying because somebody went into the water and didn't come out, I think the grief process was different. Like you're going through different stages of grief because it's not right in front of your face. You're, in bargaining mode and denial and, trying to focus on the next task. And I don't think that, especially in hindsight, I don't think, I've not dealt with a lot of like death in my life just in general, but I don't think you're thinking in your like normal, rational, you're getting all this information quickly. Things are weird. Things are happening. You're getting it from multiple information sources. You're not getting it from the main organization that's running it. There's confusion. And then there's just the emotional response when you really find out, like, oh
So
my
when did that
God.
happen? Y'all get back to Dickie's?
We were there for, Angel told you, I think Caroline told me, I think we were there for 30 or 45 minutes. And at some point I was like, hey, like no athletes are here. Like there was very few of us there. Something is strange, whatever. And then she came over to me and was like, hey, I just want you to know, like, it's been confirmed. And then I looked at Travis and I was like, holy shit. So we like hung around trying to figure out, because we were still confused. We thought that there would be an announcement of something. There was a huge prayer circle that started to get developed and I was like, oh wow, this is like real. Somebody actually passed away. And that happened. And then we left the venue. Like,
Yeah, because they said like leave, and then we'll be in contact about what happens next. And then so we literally went back and we're like, what's going to happen? And then we went back at, 5 o'clock or something, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock.
Hold on, in between there, did we hang out? Did you come back to the room? I stayed with Chris for people.
I know I went back. So when y'all are just saying y'all were at Dickie's, I was there too, but I was in so I didn't have the access media down to you guys. So I was in the media room, but then I also walked into the venue, like where the fans would sit and stuff. And I was unlike you guys, where I knew.
You knew.
Yeah, I knew. And it just felt weird being there. And like, you could tell that it was half empty, and you were like, but some people were showing up, and you could tell just by the way people moved that some of the fans were aware that either something was happening, or some may have been aware that we had lost them, and then some just had no clue. And it was just the weirdest little vibe. And but then you could tell too that like as time went on, they had all the stuff set up for the next event. Like everything was
the tires, the sandbags.
And then slowly people came in and started taking like volunteers or whatever. The staff came and just took it all to the back. Mm-hmm. And then it became clear, like for the people who may have not known, like, okay, something's up. And then that people started checking their phones. And this went on what to me felt like 30 to 40 minutes maybe. And then after that, Kiki walks out with a microphone and says,
Events are canceled
for the day. And then people hung out for a little while, just like not knowing what to do. And then eventually I think she came back, or someone else said something and said, if you don't mind, please exit the arena.
Yeah.
And it was just a very, very odd feeling.
Yeah. Did you come back and hang out with us? I can't remember what happened in between.
Come back to the hotel, you mean?
Yeah.
Did I drive
or did
with
we
you?
hang out?
Yeah, we definitely ended up hanging out after this for sure.
Okay. All I can remember
because I didn't want to be by myself, so I think I hit you guys up and said, "Can I come into your room?"
I think that's when we went to I went to get coffee. Remember the team
he
went
came
out.
to the room for a little while with us, afterwards.
And we hung out after it happened.
After,
because you were in his room, and I was like, "Man, I just feel weird being in this room by myself."
Yeah, and then that's when he came and just like sat down, and we were just sitting there. And then when it was time to leave, we left.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I wanted to say maybe we even while we were sitting there, was that when we saw it on the news too? Or is
I feel like I saw
the
it more
news was me and you at nighttime.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
There was a gap in the middle of the day where the team went to get lunch. Remember, and then I took you with me to get. We drove into Fort Worth to get coffee, and then came straight back.
It was the same thing. I didn't even want coffee, or I wasn't hungry, but I was like, I don't want to be by myself.
Yeah.
Well, this like loss of time, disorientation, confusion, whatever, I feel like is a good summary of, I think, what my brain went through for the whole experience. Like it's
then that just happened all weekend.
Yeah, and it's tough to kind of remember what happened and process and what decisions were made and all that stuff. But we ended up then that night going back. I think it was a 4:30 meeting or a 4 o'clock meeting, somewhere along there. We get there, it's all coaches and all athletes. So it ended up being the 78 individuals, all of their coaches, plus all the teams and all the coaches, and then a couple of the key CrossFit staff. And Yeah, that was just a very, very weird evening. Like the energy in there, I got it. Me and you were some of the first people in there. It was pretty empty by the time we were there, and you came in a little bit later with us and sat next to us, right? And it was super quiet, and you could hear the fans.
Where did they have y'all in the back?
So we were at the finish line.
Yeah.
So all athletes.
Oh, so you're in the arena.
In the arena. Yeah.
And then no one was in there yet.
It was just after
like, I don't know,
fans and
10, 15 minutes, then Dave and the staff finally came walking out, and then they just stood there in silence for, it honestly felt like 30 minutes.
So there's 500 people-ish sitting on the finish line, like just all like waiting for, this big public address, whatever. The leadership team of CrossFit with Dave comes in and they stand on the side.
And are y'all talking amongst each other?
No, it was so quiet.
No one was saying a word.
I mean, we were all like traumatized and shocked. Like
what just happened?
And that, I think, is why most people went. Like, we went to find out what happened. Like, there was no information at this point. We got confirmation, but we didn't get confirmation from anybody within the
CrossFit,
the running of the competition. We got confirmation from people that were like peripherally in the know because they were there, they saw it, or then it became news.
Yeah, and I think between the time of that meeting, or so before that meeting and when it started, I'm wanting to say they actually pulled him out, and so then it was like
real.
I think I showed you it. Like the news announcement came while we were sitting at one of those tables in the warm-up area that they pulled his body out, and I showed it to you.
Yes, you did. Okay, so Dave
if we get anything on this podcast timelines wrong, just forgive us because like we've already said, it's like it's hard to remember.
Haze of an experience.
It's like, did y'all ever hear prior to this, like, because I've never had anything like this in my life personally, but you'd always hear those quips about people who would be in like crimes, like their testimony's not good because their memory's all, and like you're like, really, that I feel like if I got robbed, I would, and it's like, okay, now I'm with you because none of this tracks very well.
Yeah, when you get the shock of it, I think it messes up your whole processing, your whole thought processes, your memory, how you're recalling things, your emotions in the moment are so volatile and heavy and big, and it clouds, I think, what you're remembering. But I do remember feeling like so the tension in that room and the waiting and the anticipation was so great, and it was so quiet, and I just heard the fans of the AC like woo woo. We sat, we waited, and Dave Castro was on the side with the leadership team for, I think it was 12 minutes because I watched my phone, and I guess they were waiting for late people to come in. And that was some of the most uncomfortable times for me in the event because everyone's just like, you could just feel eyeballs. Like, I can't imagine even what he was feeling in that moment, having to address this situation, and everybody wants answers.
Wanted to hear what happened. Admit,
whatever,
like all of it.
Yeah. So he comes out. He gives a speech for, I don't know what it was. Again, timelines could be off, but it felt like 2 minutes, maybe 3 minutes. It was pretty brief. And I don't remember all the words. The general summary or from what I take, maybe you guys could tell me if I'm wrong, was that he spent all day with Luca. Luca would kind of want the competition to go on and not be remembered just as Lazar's death. The competition was going to start again the next morning. And then he just ended it with, I'm sorry. That was like real quick. That was it. And then some athletes get up and walk out the door immediately. And we're all like, whoa, what's happening? Then some athletes get up and start like verbally challenging him pretty loud in a very emotional state, tears, elevated voices, whatever. And 500 people like go from sitting in the stands in like a flat line in front of him as he's giving a speech, and they kind of like surround and like create this big circle of like, give us answers, tell us what's going on. No, we're not going to go we're not going to do it this way. We need to do it differently. And it really turned into like a very, very uncomfortable circular debate of grief processing and trauma and values comparing, and different people bringing up different things, and certain people that have no experience with him, and some people that have close friendships, and people who are financially set versus people that are really poor. And all of these arguments are all happening with no clear no clear outcome goal from the athletes, no clear direction from HQ, and that lasted for 2 hours. That was like
that was a long
a
time.
90-minute long just discussion that end up getting broken off into men athletes on one side of the arena, women athletes on another, team athletes, and then coaches. And coaches kind of split up naturally into like 2 little different groups. So it seemed like there were 5 big major groups of people that were all discussing amongst themselves what is going to happen. And it was very clear in that process that we weren't going to get on the same page. Like there were a lot of ideas thrown around. I know like the internet afterwards is like bringing out, it should have went this way, it should have went that way. Like a lot of the things that are brought up retroactively were also brought up in those meetings. And a lot of people thought that that's what we were working towards. And then it deliberated into, okay, we're going to elect representatives, 5 men, 5 women.
Hold on. The whole time this is playing out, like I'm sure that y'all went in there thinking like we're going to be told something about what's going on. As this is unfolding, if I was to put myself in your shoes, my thought would be like, oh snap, now we're having to do this. Did it feel to you guys like it was just getting like the wheels were falling off, or did it feel pretty
I feel like the
normal?
wheels already kind of fell off.
Yeah,
at that
to
point.
me, I thought the wheels fell off.
I felt like there was.
I thought we were getting info.
Yeah, I felt like we didn't get any info, and then it was kind of left in our hands to make the decision, which shouldn't have been our decision, kind of that way. Like, and then it's like, what's actually happening? And then when people started debating and going about it, I was like, this could be all night that you could sit here and continue to vent about this, talk about this, what was wrong, who was wrong, all of those things. And I think everybody was just like still in shock about literally everything that it was.
And there was no closure or clarity on the big issue at hand, which is how did he die? Why did he die? What happened? What are we doing about it?
Yeah.
Like investigation. At that time, the Don Fall little like short video hadn't gone out yet, right?
No.
Like so there was no communication whatsoever. And
it's just crazy to think of like that y'all are like making decisions and like there's just no process of what even has happened yet. And how?
Well, yeah, I mean, how is a little bit crazy. But also, too, I think for me, I was very quiet. Like, I didn't voice my opinion at all. I didn't feel like it was my place. I'm not in a leadership position in CrossFit. I was there to support the athletes that I was there. And I'm not taking the floor. So it's not like a coach decision necessarily. But I did just feel very confused because I felt like the point of the meeting was more to address that than it was to address the competition itself. But that after that thing, I realized like, oh, this is all about whether the competition is going to go on and how it's going to go on and how it was remembered, and less about what I wanted from that meeting personally. And it didn't really go anywhere. It was very circular and very uncomfortable, and a lot of people were fighting and a lot of people were crying, and some people left and some people didn't show up. And the end, after 2 hours of that, they offered a survey, and they gave the athletes 10 minutes to answer the survey, or 15 minutes to answer the survey. The survey was very ambiguous, I would say. It wasn't like there were tons of people that brought up the ideas of no competition on Friday, late competition on Friday, no more competition at all, distribute the prize purse evenly amongst the athletes.
Is this like on like your phone that you did
This would be like a survey, just
yeah,
like
they sent out a digital survey to the athletes.
just like a normal survey, click yes, no kind of thing.
So the all that nuance was reduced down into a question that was like, do you want to compete or don't you want to compete? I think those were the only 2 options. I didn't read the survey because I'm not an athlete.
Travis, you read it.
Do you remember?
I don't even remember, but I mean, there was like 2 questions. Something like, do you want to compete, yes or no? And then if yes, something like, when do you want to get started? Like, have a memorial, then have a workout kind of thing, or proceed as normal. So, like something very just like generic and like not clear of like which path you would actually choose kind of thing. Like, it was very strange.
I think they were trying, I think the whole purpose of the meeting was to figure out what they were doing with the competition.
Yes.
That was it. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't an explanation. And that's what felt very cold about it. The process in which they tried to do that was definitely on the fly and clearly not thought out, because Dave delivered the message, we want the competition to continue. And then because of the reaction, that's when he started the breakout groups and all of that, which just turned into a complete clusterfuck and didn't, I mean, it came to a resolution, but, you know, he wanted to know if the competition was continuing, when it would start, and whether or not it's going to be a competition or an exhibition. And that was basically it.
Yeah. Yeah. So then that didn't get answered in the 2-hour long thing. And it was very clear that there was no leadership inside of the space of the athletes. There were voices that acted as leaders and spoke up, but they weren't elected by their peers or any of that type of stuff. So that, I think, is why it got reduced. So it got reduced to 5 male athletes, 5 female athletes, 5 team members, and 5 coaches.
But at that point, it was elected, right?
Those were
on the 5.
Yeah, I mean,
At
but
the
they're
very
elections
end, because everybody just kept going in circles. Same things were happening, that it was like, all right, why don't we split up one more time, pick the 5 that you would like to go into the back and have a discussion with CrossFit to hammer out the details of this.
Yeah.
And then we'll give you more answers later tonight, tomorrow morning.
Yeah. So, I mean, elect is a soft word, I would say, because in a state like that, and even my personality type, like something bad happens, almost instantly I go into like, I pull in, I watch, and I get defensive. I'm not going to, in a state where I don't know. I mean, I know maybe 15 people in that 500 that, like, why would I step up and try to take any sort of leadership role in something that I had no business planning and I don't really know what went on and what the details are, what people want, or if people would trust me in that role. So what ended up happening is, I think a lot of times the personalities were like, oh, I'll do it. And then people were like, oh, okay, that's good. But I don't know if you actually gave and I was only with the coaches, but let's say there was 50 coaches there. If you put, okay, we're going to put all the names of all these coaches here and we're going to anonymously vote the 5 people that we want to go represent, I'm not sure if that would be the same group of people that ended up happening. And I think that would be true for athletes as well, that I think personality type in a traumatic situation dictated things more than like an election process, because it was, again, it's quick. Like, you can't really go through like a democratic process in 10 minutes in a post-traumatic situation and expect that everyone's giving their most well thought out thing. So that ended up happening, and then we didn't really get an email from what happened after that until like it was like 9 or 10 o'clock at night, where we got an email that said doors open at 9 o'clock, Lazar tribute at 10 o'clock. And then competition will start after that. I think that was all the details we got when we left.
Yeah.
Same? Yeah. So, yeah, that was just real.
Yeah, it was strange.
Yeah.
I mean, that was pretty much how our breakdown went as well. I mean, but it ended up being like you had the few vocal minority that would speak up more or more vocal in those situations. But then you would branch off and just like lightly talk to like 1 or 2 people individually about like what they actually think and their thoughts. And it's different than what the top people would have. So we ended up splitting all those people up. Like they were almost sending 5 of the same thought process people in. And I'm like, that just doesn't make any sense. Like, you're not having anybody challenge your discussion with this. So we, I think, had 2 or 3 that were kind of pretty close. And then you had 2 other ones that were polar opposite of,
like 3 that wanted the competition to go on as per normal and 2 that
other way around.
Vice versa.
Yeah.
2 that wanted the competition to go on per normal.
Yeah.
3
like the
that,
prize purse, all those kind of discussions
Yeah.
of like, some people are like, look, this is my livelihood. I'm not financially set. Like I have to pay my bills and this is the only opportunity I kind of have. Like, I don't know what to do. Like, so then it's like, okay. And then you have other people that are backed by sponsors, have more financial
all of
setup
these
and
complex,
Yeah, but it's like, now we're trying to make that decision on a 90-minute clock of figuring out like, well, what's the right decision?
Yeah.
Right.
And also people,
and then processing what just took place. And
Right.
then,
Let's not forget that part.
but that's what I'm saying, right? Like, is you're trying to handle all, and it's just this the whole weekend. Yeah.
Yeah. And also too, I think it's become really more clear to me in it. I remember saying to you, to Linda, to whomever would listen, like, there are no more good decisions that are made in these situations.
Yeah.
Like I personally felt that if it was a beautiful memorial 3-day tribute, or we all leave and it all gets canceled, or we all participate in a competition, the net effect afterwards is still the same, that there was this traumatic, chaotic loss of a super loved athlete, and the pain and grief of that was going to play its course no matter the direction that we picked. So my general like advice in that was like, do what you think is right in this moment, and know that we're going to have to work through the, you know, the grief, the process, the guilt, all of the things. Like all of these are just pretty standard things that are in regards to trauma processing. So yeah, I don't know. I just lost my train of thought. But
it was a lose-lose.
Yeah, it was
decision.
just for
There was
everyone.
there
for
was
everyone.
no right decision.
Yeah.
It just, I think how it unfolded, how it was delivered to us, I think that's the frustration. That's the typical
Like what the
CrossFit
fallback-
way, right?
yeah.
Like of how it's like there's no communication, there's no information, there's no like, we're in this invested just as much as you are. Like we would like some information, you know, like those are the things we would like to be looped in on. And I think it just continued to spiral. But yeah, I think everybody in that situation kind of knew like, look, you can have your opinion, I can have my opinion. Neither one of us could be right, but like, do you choose to take the floor?
Yeah. And no decisions were made that night either.
No.
Like so we all came in the next morning, which I guess I'll fast forward to that. Like
Hold on, what was the text y'all got at 10?
I don't
Be
know.
there.
I mean, I
10
can pull it up.
Or I don't need I was just like
basically doors open at 9, Lazar Tribute Memorial at 10.
And the competition starts like 30 minutes later. Our team was the first heat to go.
But did it say
So
that
Tim-
in the email?
They got the heat sheets. I don't remember if they got them that night, because I got emails from the team and I got emails from the individual, but I think they knew, like our team, I think they knew they would be, because they were pissed. They would have 15 to 20 minutes to warm up and go onto the floor as the first heat.
Maybe I misunderstood that. I thought we were going there for the tribute and then to get a briefing and information as to what was happening.
No.
Oh.
The team.
The decision was made that night.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Okay. So this shows how messed up my thought process was about the situation.
Because, I mean, Chris was just like, especially after the tribute, which a lot of people were pissed off about that and how it wasn't really much of anything, which to be fair, I'm sure that's a difficult thing to put together under that timeline. They're making the announcement at 9, 10 p.m.
11
at night.
p.m. is when we got
Exactly.
the email.
11 p.m.
Thursday, August 8th, 11 p.m.
Yeah.
And does it say you're competing or just that?
We invite you to participate in the tribute for Lazar to start the competition tomorrow morning. We would like you to wear your black joggers and quarter zip up in effort to show blah, blah, blah. If you would choose to participate, we ask that you arrive at 9:30 a.m. as the ceremony will begin at 10. We will have more competition details available to you on site.
Yeah, so that's all we got, right? Yeah. So I thought that meant like we're going to do a tribute and then everyone's going to get together and is going to be talking whatever.
Figure out what the results.
Yeah,
Or
so we-
whatever.
I think I got a different email.
Okay.
Maybe it was because the teams.
Yeah.
'cause
Yeah.
the teams were going first. So maybe
Man,
they
you
got
had a
that.
way different experience than I had, which again, I mean, for an audience, if this ever sees the light of day, I think is important to understand that like we are all siloed in different experience. We all experience the same thing, but we all experience it through a way different lens and different lens of communication and all that type of stuff. But we show up I think we got there pretty early. We got
I
there
told
like
you guys to
9
get
something.
early.
Yeah,
get there
'cause
early
traffic
because
was
of
getting
traffic.
bad.
Yeah.
And then that's when we discovered all weekend long the bag check was going to be a clusterfuck.
Yeah, and I remember, I don't remember who I was talking to, but that morning experience was weird because there were people who already had determined that they're out of the competition that came back to the experience to be part of the tribute for Lazar. They wouldn't wear their CrossFit gear or whatever, and they were like already in protest mode. There were some people that showed up that were like in competition mode, and I showed up more like in a curious mode. Like,
Hold on, I know you just said protest mode. Do we know if it was protest mode or if it was just like
sorry.
Protesting,
or like
competing.
I can't compete right
Yeah,
now?
I mean,
do we
think-
know? Like I don't know.
I think
at
frustrated with how things went down, not
Well,
standing
that's a
for
given, I
an
think.
organization that's going to be putting on the
Yeah.
event when
Do
there
you
needs
get
to
the
be more
distinction
time.
I'm trying to make?
I won't say names, but I will be 100% certain that there were some people who were protesting.
For sure.
And actively trying to get others to protest as well. So
Yeah.
there were some people in protest mode some people in grief mode that pulled out.
Right.
I do think that everyone came together from an athlete perspective to go there to support him, but it was a very strange start. Like, we were there early, and I remember it was like 9:45, and we kind of like got through the security, and I see this line out the security all the way out to the street. And I remember looking at somebody because I saw heat time written at 11 o'clock on the whiteboard, which I thought was strange because the evening email I got was what he said, we'll have more info. And I was like, surely they won't start the tribute before everyone gets in there.
You're talking about the fans or?
No, the athletes. The athletes who are part of the tribute.
There's security check lines before you can get into the athlete
Checking
area.
your
So they have to
bags.
check your bags, look through all of them. Then they put a tag on it, and it's a process. So they have to get there early.
2 metal detectors. So there's only 2 lanes, but there's
And people
like
usually have 5
5
bags.
bags of food and everything. So we go out, and people are being corralled to go out to the tribute while there's still athletes that aren't in there. And keep in mind, some of these athletes are like, one of their best friends just passed away, or, you know, they're not competing in protest, and they want to be there. They want to be part of what's going on. They want to see how his life's going to be remembered. So the tone of the start of it was just not great. And we go out onto the floor, and
So there wasn't a talk like, hey, we're going to walk you out and here's what we're doing? Or was it just like, all right,
I
go
missed
out
the
there?
athlete ones. They grabbed the coaches and brought us first.
I mean, we just
Did
went
you know
and
what it was
lined
going to
up.
look like?
No.
So there was no, hey, here's what we're doing?
No, we just said we were going to line out and walk onto the floor, and then we didn't know what was going to happen when you got onto the floor.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that the tribute happens, and this is my memory of it. So I think it was Nicole Carroll came up. I think she said like 3 or 4 sentences. There was a moment of silence. Lazar's image of his hands up with his name was up there. And then a short moment of silence, and then people's social media posts of him.
The athletes walked off, and then
Before that.
yeah,
The athletes walked up. Okay, the athletes walked off. That social media post started
There was like
going
a ticker
on.
of people remembering him via Instagram.
Yeah, and then the announcer came on and said something along the lines of, "Thank you for being here this morning to tribute Lazar. The competition will begin with the teams at 11 a.m." So we go into the back.
Shit hit the fan.
And it was like another worse version of what
God.
happened the previous day. There were,
I
again,
almost feel like it was worse.
it was worse because in that moment, there were some people that had already either protested and left. Then there were people in that moment. There was groups of people from other countries and whatever that wanted to meet together to have a discussion because they didn't really feel like a lot of the things that were talked about in the evening meeting were properly reflected in how things were going on. They get back into the room, but it had already turned into pandemonium. So athletes leaving, the teams that were in Heat 1 didn't really have a chance to think about it. So immediately they had to decide, am I competing or am I not competing? And there's people already in the warm-up area literally in tears, like tears streaming down their face, doing air squats, getting ready to go to work out. Then a large group of girls that were considering, should we do it? Should we not do it? Some people that were actively trying to get the people that were on the fence to go take the floor in protest and take a knee and not do anything. There were people talking about, what should we do to honor him if we do take the floor? This doesn't feel right. Some people that were on the other side of it, where they were just like, hey, this is a tragedy, but this happens in sports and we're going to move on. And like, you know, kind of taking a little bit more of a like cold, we're going to compete type approach to it. And all of this was happening, and the clock is ticking, and their athlete control is bringing athletes out. And slowly, I think that pressure just like kind of pulled people into it. But I mean, there were so many dynamics at play, and it was too fast. And again, like I showed up, Linda didn't have shoes for anything. Like we didn't even know what we were doing. So that whole experience was just very strange. And then I think everything shifted, and it changed how people were processing when they got into and did the first workout. Because then it was almost like, well, you kind of made a decision. But then some people, the decision felt so wrong, so they left. And then other people were questioning it. Other people felt better having processed it and know that they're putting Lazar on their shirt and not letting it just get swept under the rug. So then the social dynamic of it got even stranger when Luca put a post up later in the day.
Hold on, let's rewind. You're going
Sorry.
ahead. Trav, you're so you walk off the floor. What is your story from there? Because if you got that email,
That was
you
the
don't know
worst
your
tribute I've ever seen in my entire life.
That was what you thought.
Yeah. I was like, that was terrible. Like, why that, like,
So you're walking off angry.
I think everybody was just angry and upset with like how it was said. And it was like, that's all you were going to say in that scenario. So I think more rage, anger, but like, right. I think everybody I kind of just keep my feelings in, and I'm not much of a big expresser of how I feel in situations. So I think it was more trying to process it for myself of like understanding what they were doing, what we were doing, how things were being said. And honestly, just sitting back and like listening to all the athletes talk about it and go. And I remember texting Lauren and I was like, I don't know what's about to happen right now, but people are all over the place and fuming. And I was like, I don't know if they're going to just cancel this and everybody's boycotting it right now. I don't know if people are going to take the
But
floor.
at this point, do you know you're supposed to compete? Because
Yeah,
the email you got,
you technically like you saw your heat time, but you're like,
okay,
should I? Do I? Like, what's the right move right now? Like, and then when everybody was rehashing kind of like what happened the night before, and then how frustrating everybody just was about the tribute, I think it just led to more emotions of like not knowing what to do.
sorry, not to keep going back to it, but because that email didn't say y'all were for sure competing when you got in, it was just you seeing heat times that let you knew, or they made a statement?
So
Or?
like that's how we knew.
I can't
just
remember. I just remember being surprised and shocked that it was like,
Yeah.
hold on, wait, the tribute's at 10 and
I think
heats are
I
at
just
11?
remember
What?
being in the back and then it like seeing teams go, and I was like, man, they're already going. And then having talks with some of the team members and no one's knowing what's happening. Yeah, I don't really know how we found out.
Yeah. It's like
I
the,
mean, I
the
feel like
memory
it just,
thing.
Yeah,
Like,
I feel
the
like it just
memory's
like
not
happened. It just
normal.
like people started and it just went.
Yeah. It didn't feel in the moment like people were making a decision so much as they were falling into the habits of
Competition.
athletes are trained in a competitive setting to pay attention to times, warm-ups, all of this stuff, and heat times. And I think you have, like for you, 15 years of competition experience. And I think the grief process, the anger process, the frustration process, the shock, whatever, what people ended up doing is reverting back to their habitual behaviors. And the habitual behaviors of competitive exercises is to competitively exercise. And that window opened up, and I think people kind of almost walk through not either knowing that like, hey, this decision is not a right or wrong, but you know, being with my friends and being on the floor doing what I love makes more sense to me than doing nothing. And it didn't seem in the moment much like a super conscious decision, and it was super complicated because of what was communicated, how it was communicated, what we heard versus what was real.
I think people would go
all of
back
that.
and forth between those two too. It felt like where it was like at one moment you would feel like very bought into wanting to do this for him as a tribute, and then the next moment being like, what am I even doing? I want to leave.
Yep.
And the back and forth.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that was the whole weekend.
Yeah. Literally.
Like you would finish a workout, like even if you did well, you won, like you finish and you were just like, okay. And you go right back and you were just like there was no, I don't even know the word for it. But like it was very odd.
It's like it pulled the joy of competitive.
Yeah,
now.
like-
Not the intensity necessarily. The intensity was shifted, and for me, it was like it was like being in a twilight zone. Like you're going out onto the floor and you're seeing these performers put a mask on and cover their pain and put this event on for the people. I mean, I think that is why a lot of people got drawn into it, because they knew that their family, their supporters, their affiliates, whatever, are the people that are in the stands. And there was a lot of talks about, well, if this doesn't go on, is this going to be a thing anymore? And that pulled people in, and you're in that space. And then you go back into the warm-up area and it feels like a funeral. Like it was going back and forth between those two things and just hard to reconcile, and nothing felt good, and there was nothing to celebrate. It took away your ability to feel proud of something in some ways. And I think, I don't know, like I don't want to judge any athletes, but I think some athletes were just better able to, or had a different perspective where they were able to almost compete more like something, like they were able to compartmentalize it stronger and be their normal selves in that moment. But I would say like 95% of what I saw was just people like going through the motions of doing it and wondering if they should be doing it at the same time.
There was a fair amount of rookies this year, and part of me was wondering too, like you have no precedence for this at all. So obviously it was extremely weird experience for everybody, but there's still similar precedents to being at semifinals and knowing how the warm-ups and corrals work. But I don't know this for sure, but I would assume a lot of the rookies probably had the least amount of contact with him, knew him personally, and were more like just following the leader because like they didn't really know what to do. And that's still, I don't know what the percentage was this year, but I saw a lot of new faces, or even second-time athletes.
Yeah. And people that don't have experience with CrossFit as an
organization.
So
Yeah, a lot of
resentment
young,
or any
built
of the
up
things. Yeah.
But there were people that I think had a lot of conflict with making that decision of whether or not they were going to compete in the first workout. And then I think it just got to the point almost where like you didn't have time, like you had to make a choice, and so you just do it to see how it feels, and then you just do the next one, and then you just do the next one.
Do you feel like that? Like I only thought this in hindsight, I think, but like there was almost like, so while we were there, I just kept being like, man, I just wish we could all afford some alone time to process. But then looking back, there was also an element where it felt like having the timelines that we just always had a next thing we had to do, almost just like made it, I don't know what I'm trying to say.
Like allowed
here.
you to do it.
But it was just like, rather than sit here and dwell on all that's in front of us and like the sadness and the everything else that comes with all that, it's like having like a deadline and a next thing to like look towards was just almost like it would pull you out of it, or I don't know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think it normalized it, even though it wasn't normal, because you had the next thing to do, and
right. And that just was the whole week.
And that I think after we finished the competition, coming home, that's when I feel like my grieving process started, because I had alone time and it hit me hard.
Same. Yeah, I think it almost delayed the grieving process because I didn't feel. It felt wrong. It felt heavy, but I feel like I was in there in like support mode, like working with Trav, processing it when we went back. Then Lauren came and stayed with him. So Lauren was kind of like with him, and I was just with him at the event. Linda had two of her support people there who happened to be able to get into the back. So she had a little bit more support from them. And I was helping her process because she was, on the fence. Should I do this? Should I not do this for almost the whole event? And when I came home, then it all kind of hit me. And also the grief of it, the regret of it, the doubt of it, wondering if it was like, I didn't really have any time to do or think about any of that by myself. And a lot of the thinking in that moment happened with everybody that was around, because all of them were super high time pressure situations with hundreds of people around, right? And hundreds of people influencing the decision making. So yeah, it was just a very, 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 very strange timing. But I think in hindsight, having something to do, I would say that canceling the event entirely and just telling everyone to go home would have been more traumatic. So I think now there's probably something in between, like running the competition as normal or shutting it down entirely, something in between that allowed the athletes to be together with the fans, remembering Lazar. I think there was something beautiful and powerful that needed to happen in there to help the processing and creating memories. But It's just way easier. Like I hear people talking about it after the fact that weren't there or saw it on the live stream or weren't in those discussions and on those timelines. And I don't know, it's just really hard to process how people could be so sure of what should have been done or how it should have been handled. Even me, who was there, I'm like, I don't know what these decisions were. Like, who were they making them? How was the conversation with Luca? How did it go? Like, there's so many unknowns that still, after 2 weeks, make me feel just very conflicted and confused.
Well, that's the other thing too, is like, so while we're all going through this in real time, it's like we're also sometimes checking our phone, and then like, so you're seeing how the outside world is taking this at the same time as you're there. And it's like, so now not only it's like you had the tragic accident happen, and that's already enough to process in and of itself. And then it's just like the weekend just kept stacking new things for you to have to process and think about, without ever having done that fully before there was a next thing to stack on top and a next thing to stack on. And it's just like,
multiple layers of stress and uncertainty.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it didn't hit me till we got back, and then I had to do it in front of everybody and talk about it. That's when I feel like it really hit me. I think, in the moment, all those thoughts play in your head. Am I making the right decisions? How do we process this? Talking with you guys and Lauren and stuff, and just trying to understand. I think those are the difficult things. But yeah, I mean, I think it definitely hit me way more when we got back, and then videos and that kind of stuff. I think that's when it was weird.
I didn't cry once while I was there. I felt sadness, and I felt so empathetic for what the other people were going for, but I didn't like cry. And then I got home and I got by myself, and I found myself multiple times breaking down and having like tears come out, writing things that would help me process it, reading them out loud, crying more. I think people need to kind of understand that, like that grief timeline and that processing timeline, if you have things in front of you that you're trained to do. Like I've been in competitive situations in sports so many times that like, I feel like, and I didn't, I'm not like the athlete, the decision maker, blah, blah, blah in any capacity, but I feel like it was like, I went into automatic mind. I just did like, this is what I do.
Peaceful to that. Like getting back to like, it just helped. I don't know. Yeah.
It helped just process this, like, oh my God, what is going on? What happened type thing. So, I mean, that feeling was like all of Friday. And Friday was I forget even what the events were. I knew there was the field event.
Yeah.
But
Deadlift, GHG, rope climb.
He had no food all day because we didn't know we were showing up to competition. So he like went into the evening event and he's like, I've only had a protein shake. I'm running around trying to find water for him. We're outside. It's 100 degrees. So it wasn't like people are just going on with the competition as if everything was normal. But like, yes, he competed, but it's just really hard. It's hard to even describe. It's why we weren't even sure if we're going to do this podcast.
I mean, and that's what it felt like all weekend, honestly. Like even looking back, I don't really remember the workouts. I don't really remember much about it besides that moment, right? Like I feel like that's the only thing you like think about. I think the workouts were just like, okay, that's what we have to do right now. But even like plans, thinking about it, like it just never felt right, I guess is how to describe it. And so you just would go through it. And then we got done. I was like, it was like good to be done with it. Like
kind of like it's over. I'm relieved.
Which is strange because sometimes you're like, oh, I want this to keep going. I would like want more events. And like, honestly, it was like after Saturday, you're like, what is happening? Like,
yeah.
And
it started processing. It started processing where I started to feel it more as it was happening. Like, what's going on here? What, like, and then more athletes started leaving, and then the cuts, they still made cuts, even though it was on Saturday night, which added to the complexity, and people were pulling out that were near the cut line already, which added to the dynamic of how it was perceived. Like, are they pulling out because they were on the cut line, or are they on the cut line because they were so messed up emotionally that they weren't able to compete? And these conversations were happening, and then we're like should these conversations be happening right now? Like, does it even matter? Like, and it happened so quick. And then by the time Saturday ended, there was 2 workouts timelines on Sunday. And then people were like, well, there's 2 more things to do and I don't want to quit. I'm not a quitter. I want to finish what I started. And I want to be there for the closing ceremony with Lazar and the tribute. And like, there were just so many variables that went on to the continuation of it. But most people, I think, were checked out emotionally. At least that's how I felt.
Let's backtrack a little bit. Because one of the, and I know Perrin brought it up for a split second, but we didn't really talk about this. But on Friday, it was our team was amongst the first group of people who had to compete right after the. So how long was that transition? It was like the initial ceremony for.
They had 15 minutes to warm up.
Yeah.
From like the moment they got back from the ceremony to the moment they got out in the corral.
And 15 minutes from the time they got back from a crazy emotional, like people came back in there and there were so much crying and rage and infighting and confusion, and that I feel like that was probably to me one of the most like unfair aspects of the weekend.
Yeah,
like, that just seemed to be again, there's no right answer. I'm not running that event. I don't want to pour onto it, but that was just a hard moment for people.
We had a member of our team that was not ready to go out there emotionally and very, very conflicted about what she wanted to do, whether she wanted to compete, but she was on a team and they put in all this work and it was a rookie year and like you're doing it for these other people. And so, and now you have the safety aspect again, right? You have somebody that's literally crying, warming up. She has to do 150-pound sandbag squats, like, I don't know, 60 of them or something, legless rope climbs to 20 feet in this next event. You have 15 minutes warm up after all of this. Like, they got through it because they're amazing athletes and you just go on autopilot. And I think you have each other. And so probably the teams were probably the most equipped if you'd have to pick somebody to do that. But like, that's a very hard job. And they were not happy to do it, but you know, it did kind of just start the competition where maybe because you don't have time to dwell on those things, it's better. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, I remember talking to Travis when it was happening, and there was a bunch of people contemplating, should we stop the event? And Travis looked over to me and he was like, stop the event. It's happening. And like pointed, and he's like, that's heat 2 warming up. Like heat 1's on the floor, literally working out right now.
People were still trying to decide.
Oh my God! To the moment.
Oh yeah. Till
like,
where they had only enough time to warm up for the event.
So it
people
must
were
have really
deciding.
just been like wild back there.
It was chaos.
It was crazy.
It was insane. It was the by far the weirdest weekend of my life.
So just being in the stands, the next thing for us that like where our in-person weekend got weirder was just then from there, that's when the different teams, some would do the minute, some wouldn't. And then the next thing you know, that's almost what set off the next wave of online talk.
Yeah.
And then it's like, if you kept up with that, then it was just like, now things are just getting crazy.
Yeah. I don't know what people online expected from people in that situation. Like there's a lot of internet hate, internet judgment, whatever. And I think I understand the emotion to it because I feel a lot of it and I had to repress a lot of my own resentments, frustrations, whatever over the years. But it was just so weird to go through to be like, hey, these groups of people who are putting on this experience for our whole community and dedicating their whole lives to it and put in this horrible position to make a decision, who probably shouldn't be the ones making the decision, make a decision to do something that they think is right and they think is honorable. Some of them do it for other reasons, but for the most part, I think most of them were doing something because they thought it was the right decision for just doing the right thing and not just letting this thing just end and then have that be the reaction. It was just crazy. And it compounded the grief that the people were going into because now they're not just dealing with the trauma of their friend dying in competition or swimming over them or whatever scary things. Like there's people talking about the anxiety they experience afterwards. And I think that's pretty clear out there. but now they're dealing with the trauma of being publicly shamed and abused for a decision that they didn't really make. And then that made me more angry than the whole situation in the first place.
People commented on I don't know if I feel like I reshared a story and someone's like, can't believe you're competing right now, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, dude, like, you're the last person I need to be hearing any of this stuff from, like, in this situation. Like, you're not here, you don't understand, like.
And we're hearing it from ourselves. It's not like the questions people are asking were not things we were dealing with and processing ourselves. So, yeah.
Con Porter said something very good there. I don't remember what day it was, but just the whole, like, no matter where you fall and why you did or didn't, whatever, but like
stop judging us.
Just stop judging each other. And like, because at the end of the day, whatever side you fall on what should have or shouldn't have happened, it's like no one was in the right position to make a sound call, no matter which way you slice it. So,
and I think
it's
that
like just that grace to be like, hey, no one was in the right mind to make a decent decision.
I mean, even now, I still don't know if I made the right decision.
Yeah.
Like, I still haven't felt normal since. Like, even social media, any of it. Like, it just doesn't feel, like, working out, it just doesn't feel right. Like, to some degree. And you're just like, what's actually happening?
Well, that's part of why we're doing this, is because for me, doing any videos right now, I'll just feel stupid. Like, when we got home, everything just felt like none of this matters.
Yeah. But we also want to get back to work.
But you also want to get back to it. You're split 50-50. You're like, I'm ready to get back to real life. We got to go on. You know, and there's like, it's like you have that part of your brain.
And if there's all these problems that are now much more clear, let's get to work on fixing them and let's do this stuff. And
it's hard to explain that you have, or at least for me, but it's like you go back and forth.
It's a
between
dichotomy.
The two.
Yeah. And that's the same dichotomy that I think the athletes and two, I know it's easy to, like, I don't know, the finger pointing thing, but like all the people at CrossFit are probably experiencing that too. I mean, how many people I've had conversations with in athlete control for the last decade, and the rogue support staff and the people not in the decision-making stuff, like they're processing this trauma too, like walking around and I'm sure wondering like, is this the best thing that we should do? Is this good for the community? Is this going to rally the community? Or is this, I don't think I really anticipated that it would fracture the community as much as it seems to have done online. But again, you're not thinking super rationally in that situation because it was so quick, shocking, and
I kept saying disorienting. Like for instance, on Friday, I was in the head state of like, all right, let's get back to this. Let's go. And then by Saturday, I was like, fuck this. I want to go home. I'm like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
And it just kept going. Like in moments, you would be around certain people and you'd feed off that energy. And for instance, speaking of disorienting, it's like I would go out there sometimes and it was like the crowd was somber. And the next time I go out there, they're doing the wave. And it's like the human brain is not made to understand what's happening right now.
I would come up from the warm-up area to get food and go into the venue. And I was like, I felt like I was on a different planet. It was so strange because it felt normal. Like and I was like, these people have no idea what it's like to be in this underground where we were. It did feel like a funeral the entire time, and that messed with me. Where like I would get food and I would just be like, I just want to go sit outside by myself and not talk to anybody.
Yeah. I saw you walk outside once after you got food. I was gonna come get you, and then I was like, nah.
Yeah, well, that's the weird thing, too, because the media portrayal of what it looked like, the optics of it to somebody that wasn't there, are very different from what was actually there. Because if the people in the media were like, hey, we want you to go and catch everybody in the back, in the underbelly of the beast, grieving and crying or whatever, they would never put that out. But then the perception of what it was would have been different. But you're only getting the on the floor stuff, and I'm sure they're,
I never saw the feed. Were they showing, like, did it
I don't know. I just assumed that
I
if
never
people
watched
were
it.
crapping on I know the comments on the feed and whatever were like, oh, people are just competing like nothing happened. And I was there and I was like, that is not what I experienced at all. Like, there were definitely a few people that were just a little bit more like in-game mode than others. But again, I don't even...
But even then, that's just how judge that. that's how they process.
Because Sunday hit...
Who's to say that those people didn't get home, like Travis said, and then get hit with the wave of like, whoa.
Yeah.
It's like...
Yeah.
I'm usually the kind of person who just buries things, buries,
Yeah.
and then deals with it later.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
And
on
so-
Saturday, it started feeling like extra strange and heavy. And then Sunday, I was like, I'm not doing okay anymore. And
Right.
I was like, I gotta like keep I have to keep my resolve for one more day because I'm here to do a job out of duty and respect to people that I love, that I know dedicate their lives to this. And then it ended, and I went back to my hotel room, and I was like, I gotta go. Like, I just packed my shit up, got on the next flight, went home, and that.
Yeah, we were sharing a room, and you sent a text to us all like, "Hey, I peaced out."
Yeah. And maybe that was like, in hindsight, again, it's like, I regret, I don't know, it's like that decision, was that like leaving people behind or whatever, but
No, we all
No,
yeah,
it's
understood.
fine.
yeah,
We would have all booked
Yeah.
a flight.
I wish, I would have ready to go too. I was ready to go Saturday night.
Yeah, but then that's for me personally when the emotional aspect of it hit. And I remember talking to Travis, I was like, man, it's so weird because it seemed like the women athletes processed the emotion immediately. There were so many tears and so much crying. And even just the number of people that withdrew from the competition immediately or very soon after it were more on the women's side. And the teams were more in conflict because the women were processing. And I think the emotion of it hit like a little bit more immediate. For whatever reason, I don't know if it was because of shock or whatever, like I didn't even process the feeling side of it until I could be by myself. And then I got home and I was by myself and I couldn't function. Like I didn't eat for 2 days. I didn't leave my house. I didn't really know Lazar that much. And that is how just the death and the weekend and the ramifications on our whole industry and the wondering if we made the right decision, whatever, like it started to process and talking to you and talking to everyone. So I don't know. It's just, it's very unfortunate how much judgment and added trauma was put it on people. Cause I don't think the people on the internet commenting, if they're like, I can't believe you did this, I think they're doing it really from a place of like, there is some goodness to that. Like they want it to be virtuous in how it happened, but I don't know if they're really realizing that you're adding trauma to an already traumatic situation by commenting in this way. So even if you feel that way, like it's hurting people who are already hurting, and the hurting itself is stopping the ability from being our normal, calm, rational, thoughtful selves. So it takes some time to like work through this for people.
Me and Kyle Habdo drove back together, and he asked me at what point, he's like, what do you feel like one of the big lessons from this was, or the big lesson? I said, I don't know what it is. There's tons of things, but I know one thing I'll carry forward is when something big like this happens and I'm the person on the internet, and I wasn't there, like I want to like just take this experience with me and know that like I can have my opinions are valid and I can have them, but just tone it back and just try to listen more, because what I found after we got home is like I just craved being around people who were there, because being around people, talking to even the best of intentions people who weren't there, like people saying all the right things, whatever that may be, like people who were speaking with a good heart, like I didn't want to hear it yet. It was like there was something more comforting to talking to, and not in like an elitist, I was there, you weren't. It was just, I don't know. Did y'all feel any of that? Like it was just different?
I definitely felt like it was different. But I was also talking to you about that a little bit. I mean, we were sending a few messages about it being very uncomfortable being alone. It's like you feel like you want to be alone after all that. I was like, I just want to get out of this nightmare. And then when you're alone, you feel like the most lonely ever.
Yes.
But I remember in the middle of the weekend, like when I actually was alone, it'd be like I just had a few moments in my hotel room, and I'm like, I'm so glad we have so many people here, like of TTT, Travis, Lexus, Linda, Bethany, all the staff, the team. And
families.
Man, I didn't even think about
felt
that.
about like, because I noticed in the warm-up area, I would see like one athlete with their coach, and I almost wanted to be like, you want to come sit at our table, just to have people to have these small moments of normalcy where we're joking around. because it was so fucked up.
Yeah.
And I felt for those people, and I did reach out to a few of them from here and there, and just to kind of make sure they were okay. But having people there, I think, made the experience maybe a little bit easier to get through. So I was grateful for that.
Yeah. I mean, I think coming back, I didn't want to come in here. I mean, I don't think I did till I had to coach Wednesday. And then I really just didn't want to talk to anybody about the situation, just because I feel like I'm more of a bottled up process. I mean, from years of this, that's just how I handle things. So I think having to talk about it when people come in, I felt like is almost like harder for me personally to deal with. So it was more like I didn't want to come back and start talking about it, because I feel like that's all we just lived in for those 5 days. Like, of
and you got to start from scratch.
We're
You can't
so processing. I didn't even know what to say.
Yeah. And people were looking, I was super first of all,
I mean, even doing this,
I
just sat there for 10 minutes asking you how we were going to do this and go about this, of trying to get an understanding of a way to do it. Like,
yeah,
we're this podcast.
Yeah, this podcast. We want to be respectful. We want to tell our truth. We don't want internet hate, all of that. We want to properly respect our brand and the belief of all the people that are in the brand. We're not really sure how we feel, what the ramifications are. We just moved our gym. So like I was telling Trav, like we came home, but I don't even feel like I'm home. Like the podcast area is not even set up. We're not even sure. Like this is the first podcast we're putting out in this
You
space.
just said you don't feel like one of the things I felt was like, I kind of wish I could go back to that old gym like, for comfort.
Yes.
Like, cause being here, I feel like it's like, we'll grow to love this. This is a great gym. That's not my point, but like,
it's just
it felt like we're like at a drop
in. It was the worst
in.
initial comeback to a grand opening of a place.
Yeah.
And then it was even like, how are things operating here? What things do we need to fix?
Yeah.
There was shit going down while we were gone.
Yeah,
I got to go back
happening.
into meetings about business stuff. And people are asking me, even in there, people are like, oh, I can't wait to hear your thoughts on this situation. And I was like, what? I don't even want to hear my thoughts on this situation. Like, I'm not ready to talk about it. I don't know. Like, this is unprecedented and like industry revolutionizing. Like, I don't think this just like, hey, we come back, talk about it, and we move on. It's like, this is a multi-month.
This is going to change the entire
this is
sport
landscape
layout of everything on how it all operates from here on out. So
and who participates and who participates in what thing and who supports what thing. So it was just a huge challenge that I think we're still going through, and I think a lot of people are going through, because we're pretty removed from it. I mean, there are other people that he was their training partner, or who felt like what happened at the games was the domino that pushed them over the edge of like, oh, there has to be change, and then what those changes are and who's in charge of making them and how they're perceived by the public and how they're perceived by, who's at fault for this whole situation, the lack of transparency. Like, we still don't really know what happened, right? Like, that is just 2 weeks later. I would imagine it's going to be months down the road that happen. And I don't know, I'm consciously aware of like, I can't wait and just sit in sorrow and grief for 3 or 4 or 5 months before making a decision as to like moving forward. So we're kind of in the same situation, like making this podcast. It's almost like the time pressure of like, hey, we got to move on with life. There's people competing in masters competitions, and there's people out there that still love this sport. We come to the affiliate and people still love working out.
And getting back to work will be good for us.
Yeah, for sure. Like part of our grief. So,
and I know like, as we're saying that, at least for me anyway, it's like, bro, you were the media guy 20 levels removed. Like, and we got people their family just lost a son. And so I don't want to take anything away from that, but it's like, I don't know what my point was. I just got sad. Sorry.
Yeah. But that is what
like
the emotion, like
that's the emotional roller coaster we're going.
I mean, that's just what's been happening. I feel like constantly.
I mean, yeah. Keep laughing. Let's get back into good times.
Yeah.
But I'll say this too, on a different note. While we were there, I pulled up interviews with Lazar, and I don't think I ever met him. I don't remember ever meeting him, but I just started watching all these interviews, and you hear how great he was. And I think when anyone passes, people always remember the good things. But man, watching all his stuff, this dude seems like I miss a guy that I never met, and I just wish I could have. He just seems like the greatest dude of all time. And there's a one actually with Brian Friend that came out like I think the day before. And so there's some good stuff out there. If you have the stomach to, like, I know some might not want to, but I mean, it's just good to see him and
yeah, and understand what we really lost.
Yeah,
because I think that can put in perspective why the reaction from the community was so big.
Yeah,
you know,
like just watching his interviews, I was like, man, I want to be a better person watching how you move about.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to make everything weird.
No. I mean, look, we knew this was going to be a tough podcast to do, and I think like addressing it. Okay, this was our experience. Like, do you guys have anything else to add? I mean, Sunday, I skimmed through Sunday and basically said I left. You stayed. I don't know if you want to cover like what the closing ceremonies were like. I didn't watch it. I didn't see the final event. I just kind of left.
I mean, they played a video. They gave us flowers to walk out and put out by the gumdrop with his name on it and stuff, which then brings all the emotion back. And then you sit there and you watch the video that they displayed, which brings all the emotion back again. So I think part of that was what people wanted that night.
Friday morning.
Friday morning. I think that's what people wanted to see versus what took place. And I think this was their way of trying to help that situation.
But maybe also that they had the time to plan it.
Yeah, and I agree. But I think
it's too late.
The one sentence that was said, I think everybody was just a little upset with how that unfolded. But then, so you pretty much just had the ceremony, and then it was very strange after that. Like, knowing them when they were handed the medals, didn't even stand at the podium, just kept walking, placed the medals down. Like, it was a very, very strange energy dynamic in there. And then to be like, all right, let's leave, was just odd. But yeah, that's kind of, I mean, I'm even trying to think back of I
can't remember anything.
How it all happened. But yeah, you pretty much just finished and then packed up and then.
Yeah, it was left. Like you can't really get. So normal competition for me, the end of it brings closure. It brings closure to the whole training cycle. It brings closure to that weekend. The uncertainty is over. There's a time where you can kind of just go out and eat with your people and celebrate or just get some quiet time and process. But it was like the end felt like, for me, a new beginning of this huge mountain of stuff that was going to open up. Just the grief, the reaction within the industry, how the industry was going to change, whether or not the games was going to happen again. If it did, who was in leadership? How will we be part of it? What will I be called to do? How will people process this situation? How will this change people's goals? And that compounded with the fact that even still now, 2 weeks later, there's still not, for me, closure on what happened. Just the base whole reason for this trauma. And we got to wait for it, right? Like, there's not a criminal investigation. There's an internal investigation. There's some concern about whether or not that internal investigation will be released to the public. So there's still just a lot of open wound, non-closure feels that happened. And I think people want commentary from camps and commentary from leaders in the space and commentary from pro athletes that were part of it. But we can't really give it. Like, we don't know. For me, I don't really know. What I do
we know what you know to a degree. We just were there and experienced everything at a much higher level. I don't feel like, we don't know anything.
Yeah. I think the primary sentiment I got, or that I feel right now, is this experience definitely brought our internal community of TTT closer together. I think I felt I leaned on people. For maybe the first time in my career that I could remember, told people I can't work. I can't write programs. People were okay, you work on yourself type thing. And just being vulnerable and asking for help and being in this space made me realize like, oh, we really we love each other, and we have put so much time and energy into this thing that we love that the essence of it's not going to go away. I mean, everyone in our gym is going to keep training to get healthier and better. And there's going to be people with goals, and the sport of fitness is more than CrossFit. And there will come, I don't know what the quote unquote justice will look like for his loss, but I think that there will be, the whole community rallied. And I know there's like over $500,000 that was sent to his family through donations. That does not help the loss, but it shows that people really care and want to support, and that will probably, the event that happened will be a catalyst for a change moving forward. And I think we want to be part of that, but we also don't know what that looks like. We don't know if, okay, CrossFit leadership gets totally restructured and a whole new team does it, and there's new safety protocols, and there's new collaboration between organizations and them and external third parties, or if, hey, that's going under and there's this whole new thing that's going to get started that we're going to participate in. And that uncertainty is where we're kind of sitting, and we're just focused on, hey, let's go to the competitions we do want to support. Let's keep training. We want to put stuff out. Like, we wanted to put this out so we can kind of get back to doing what it is that brought us all together in the first place. So I don't know if this video will see the light of day, but if it does, I think really the sentiment is like, hey, we're hurt by this. We don't think it's okay, but we're still not sure then what the path to make it all okay is, other than trying to bring the community together. First internally within our own community, like people who watch and listen to us, but on a broader sense, I feel like the division of athletes, the division of training camps, the overly competitive aspect of it that doesn't seek the greater good and only seeks to find the best and push for the best and not think about some of those other more human elements, I think is something that we all can come together and work on kind of in Lazar's name.
Agreed.
You got anything else to add, man? You got any words you can get out?
No, I was trying to figure out I think maybe a parting thing, and I'll just edit this out if it doesn't make any sense, is like going back to before I got choked up and bailed my thought. I think part of what this experience was interesting to me for was like, I wouldn't say I'm some like tough guy as far as how I go with my mentality, but like even in this own podcast, when you keep saying the word trauma or traumatic, it's like, I know that that's a real thing and that people deal with that, but it's like when I hear that stuff, it's like my nature to just be like, I wouldn't say eye roll, because I care that people feel that way, and if that's how they're feeling, or if there is something that's going on, like there's a level of caring I have, but to me, I've just never had that, and so it just kind of hits me and falls off, and it's like, okay, that's other people, not me. And I've had my best friend pass away unexpectedly, and that was awful, but whatever happened this weekend, all the circumstances combined, like this affected me in a way that now when I hear that stuff, I'm like, okay, now it's real to me and I understand it. And it's just been almost kind of like an acceptance of like, dang, okay, like I said, I cared before, but it's like, I think there was an element of just discrediting people. And like I was trying to say a second ago, I'm like so many layers removed as just the media guy, but compared to like the athletes who had to do it and the family. But I don't know, it was a crazy weekend, and getting home, it just was, there was way more thoughts once I got home and was alone, and now I'm trailing off because I don't know what I want to say anymore. So jump in, Trav.
I would add the first thing I did when I got back was go get help to process it. I did counseling sessions. I saw my psychiatrist. I think maybe I am tough in some senses, but I think I'm also aware of the sensitive vulnerability that I have. So I went and got help because I knew I needed it emotionally. But I think if there are people in that realm that, like, I've talked to some athletes that haven't talked about it at all. And I don't know if necessarily not addressing it is a good idea. And I think just addressing and figuring out.
That just feels so alien to me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I would just encourage people to figure out how to, process and talk about it. Cause I just think that this event for a lot of people was like, even just the fear of being in the water for some people and knowing like, oh, wow, that could have been me. Like there's a lot of things that I think people are like, they're going to come out and affect how people, they're just covering it up with this mask of like, oh, I'm tough.
Well, I had a feeling while I was out there filming where I didn't look out there and say there's not enough safety. There was none of that. Like, but on a subconscious level, I must have felt something because I looked out there and was like, and this has never happened to me once at a CrossFit event, but I looked out there, I was in the middle of the lake filming, and I just felt like, man, I hope they have eyes on everybody, because the shot that I was seeing just felt wild. It was almost one of those, like, even in the moment, I was like, oh, like, where's the wood? Let me knock on some wood. Like, because that's not a thought I've ever had before, any of these things. And now, again, I don't know why I'm talking. You sure we're going to post this?
Yeah, we need to just chop.
Can we just delete everything I've said?
No. I like what you said.
Yeah. I mean, I think just speak to people. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing.
And,
like, I think
support each other.
because we all have kind of gone through it, that I feel like it makes it easier to talk with you because you understand it and you kind of are there in that situation. When I think a lot of people aren't there, it's hard. Even members ask questions or things. I'm like, you don't get it. Like, you don't understand how it unfolded, how it happened. And even when you try to explain it, it doesn't make sense. And then even still now, it doesn't make sense. But at least, like, as you talk with other people, if they were there, like, I think it's important to do that. And especially from my sense, because I don't usually share, I think it was nice actually having Lauren there, because she is somebody, like, one of the very few people besides you that I actually like talk with.
You don't share your feelings with me.
Very rarely, but more than anybody else. So, I mean, you're at the top of that list. But I think just having someone there to, like, talk about, hug, like, very simple things of knowing, like, this could have been different.
Yeah, I would, I have something final to add for myself, is that I really do want to thank our community of people, because I feel like we only put out that one post and it was pretty overwhelmingly positive. There was no hate, and I'm super appreciative of that, because we were worried and we were trying to figure out, like, what do you say in this moment? Like, it doesn't seem like there was a good thing to say and do. And
the only thing that felt right was to just
tell a story.
Tell our stories about.
Yeah. And then I came back and I went to that tribute, and, like, people really cared about us. Like, I was hugged, and I don't think I'm like I don't give the energy of like, hey, come and hug Max type thing, but more people offered love, support, hugs. I got emails, text messages from people I haven't spoken to in a really long period of time. So I'm very appreciative of that, and just, like, the coolness of our community.
That's a good point.
And just being loving in a time when there was a lot of hate and a lot of internal pain. I mean, we put a lot of time and energy and money and risk into supporting and trying to do this at a world-class level. And there was a life loss, but there was also tons of dreams that died in that moment. Tons of people that have spent decades and, tens of thousands of dollars and whatever. And with the trauma of losing somebody, there was also the trauma of realizing, like, you're waking up in a nightmare where your dream is dead also. And I know that runs secondary to the loss of a life and the grief of a family, but I was overwhelmed with the love that came to support me when I wasn't the person that, felt the primary trauma. Like, it wasn't an athlete I coached, or it wasn't my best friend or that, but I still got a lot of support. So for any of you that sent me messages, I appreciate that very much.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Everybody being patient too. Like, I hadn't thought about that. Like, all of our athletes and everybody's just been super cool. Perrin, final word?
I mean, I second everything you said. I got so many messages during the competition, after the competition, people who were like, I didn't want to say anything, but yeah, I felt that. I felt that with the people that were there. I felt that coming back. I still feel that. And, if there's anything, like you said, that's positive and good that comes out of any of this, is I think it will strengthen the local communities of people, and I hope the athletes. I mean, I think right now it's not looking very good, but it's unfortunate that people feel like they need to pick sides in this, and it was a very weird, almost experimentation of human behavior in not a good way, and in other aspects a very good way. So I don't really know. I'm still processing myself, and it's difficult to know what to do. But I think in some of our internal meetings, and even right now, I think trying to move forward in the best way and on the timeline that's important to you over time, that will be, I think, the most therapeutic. Like trying to work on things that are important to us, and not as much listening to the noise that's happening externally. But that's very hard to do. And, throughout the competition, I had to not pay attention to social media as much. And even right now, like it's nasty out there. And I think that's an unfortunate side effect of what's going on right now. Like, people want to use this to promote change and also celebrate Lazar's life, but now there's all these things that are distracting from that. So I hope there's a way that we can kind of move forward, but I do feel very fortunate to be a part of this community.
Same. All right, well, that is us addressing the worst, I think that was the worst weekend of my life, to be honest. The
worst weekend, worst games experience,
Yeah.
worst time doing something like that.
So there's not that much that we could say to, I think, lighten the mood, but what at least my mission will be right now is to try to just get back to work to contribute to the space. Like, I don't think, at least for me internally with TTT, we still want to help athletes that have specific training goals. We still want to promote educational stuff. We want to put good information out on our podcasts and laugh and tell good stories and try to get back to being human and not have all of our discussion be about how messed up our industry is or who's to blame or who's at fault. So I think moving forward, and I don't know if I'll get buy-in, and Chris makes all our media, so he's going to have to get buy-in from this, but I'm going to try to encourage us to, like, we're not going to forget this, and I don't think any of us will forget this anytime soon. And I think that our actions and our actions behind the scenes will indicate that we will be a force for change, but I think that change will not come quickly and will not come with hateful words on the internet. It will come with productive dialogues with people that can make decisions and are powerful in the industry. So we'll do that, but also we're going to try to get back to talking about other things, the sport of fitness outside of CrossFit and other journeys and other things that can help us lighten the mood for ourselves as well without forgetting or doing it in a distasteful way.
Sounds great to me.
All right, everyone. If you get to see this and it doesn't end up in our archives, I hope that you think we did some positive service by telling you our stories and our side of it, and we appreciate you listening.
Thanks.
Oh.